Chapter 125. This matrix was made for it. Boundless spiritual energy poured into him. His second Tao pillar slowly solidified. Without the constant leak, I'd form the second Tao pillar anytime, Meng Hao sighed. A few days later, he opened his glittering eyes. He didn't know the stir he caused emerging from the third matrix simultaneously with Wang Lihai and Song Jia. People speculated he was a chosen from some sect. There was no way to confirm it, fueling guesses. Meng Hao was a dark horse. Amidst the various discussions, the common conclusion reached was that Wang Lihai was having some problems. Were it not for that, he would have emerged much earlier. Meng Hao looked at the puppy, warmth filling his face. It was now much bigger, half the size of a person, like a baby ox. Thick red fur covered its sturdy body, brimming with power. Its teeth seemed sharp as swords, claws thick as human fists, sharp enough to rip heaven and earth. Its crimson red eyes made it ferocious. It shocked anyone who saw it. It was no longer a puppy, a blood mastiff now. Standing coldly as if guarding its space, it would rip anyone who approached Meng Hao to pieces. Meng Hao's expression warmed. In months, it grew from a tiny puppy to this state. Through the matrices, they'd formed a strange friendship, wounded together, charged together, experiencing life and death. Sensing his gaze, the mastiff turned and looked at him. Ferocity vanished, replaced by happiness. It wagged its tail vigorously, ran over, stuck out its tongue and licked his hand, looking with puppy-dog eyes. Meng Hao smiled. He ruffled its head, saw pleasure on its face, and laughed. Raising his head, Meng Hao looked back at the third matrix. There were still 3 people stuck inside. Ahead in the fourth matrix were 3 indistinct figures. Further ahead in the fifth, there was only one. Meng Hao stood, patted the mastiff, then strode into the glowing exit door. He emerged in the volcano. Months passed. He transformed into a colorful beam shooting toward Chu Yuyan, who sat meditating. As he arrived, she opened her eyes. She lifted her hand and a pill flew out, the 5th minor pill. He put the pill in his bag, turned and disappeared. He returned, flicked his sleeve, and 7 pills shot forward to Chu Yuyan. These 7 pills concocted together are the 7 Thunders pill, he said. He threw her a jade slip, which described the concoction formula. The exact amount of time needed to concoct the pill, however, had been erased by Meng Hao. "Who is in first place?" asked Chu Yuyan, looking at Meng Hao and temporarily ignoring the 7 Thunders pill formula. "I can't see what he looks like, but his blood divinity is a dragon." She thought for a moment. He must be from the Li clan. After this, she looked down and began to study the jade slip. Meng Hao was silent for a while. Then he slowly said, "You have 1 chance. If you fail, I don't have enough ingredients for a second try." He looked at her for a moment, then turned around and became a beam of light which disappeared into the distance. His eyes sparkled. "When she finishes the pill, she will no doubt consider consuming it. However, the turtle shell makes it quite clear that it takes about 3 months to use the 7 minor pills to concoct the final pill. She doesn't know this, so I will be sure to be there at the key moment." As he thought about this, he flew up to the glowing shield above the mists. He examined it carefully again, then shot back down to the Blood Immortal's sacrificial altar. Without hesitation, he re-entered the legacy zone. Back on the wide platform, the mastiff instantly reappeared. It now exuded the powerful pressure of the late Foundation establishment stage, which didn't affect Meng Hao in the least bit. Meng Hao took a deep breath. Then his body flashed as he and the mastiff flew into the fourth matrix. A vast, endless desert stretched out as far as the eye could see. Even though no scorching sun was visible in the sky, suffocating heat rippled throughout this world. It was as if the entire place were a giant steamer basket, intent on cooking everything inside until it withered up. Meng Hao examined his surroundings, his heart filled with vigilance. After having passed through the second and third matrices, he now understood a bit more how they worked. However, this desert was completely silent. Not a shadow of a moving thing could be seen. No archaic voice echoed out to an explanation. Meng Hao sat there contemplatively for a while, then lifted his foot and took a step forward. The mastiff walked quickly by his side. Man and dog, together they walked forward into the desolate and uninhabited desert. After he had taken a few steps, Meng Hao looked back at the path they had trod and noticed that the footprints he had left behind had turned black. Then, a black aura rose up from the footprints. The surrounding sand began to emanate a buzzing sound. From the speed with which the aura began to dissipate, it seemed as if it didn't dare to even approach Meng Hao. Suddenly, the black aura began to transform into a flower of 3 petals, which had the appearance of a demonic face. Then it disappeared. Seeing this, Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, the mastiff began to howl. Looking off into the distance, Meng Hao saw a massive group of brown scorpions scurrying toward him. They seemed to be without number as they shot toward him from off in the horizon. The mastiff flew up into the air, roaring. Above, the sky started to grow dark as if evening were falling. But it was not evening, and if you looked closely at what above appeared to be dark storm clouds, you would see they were in fact clouds of winged scorpions, screaming through the air toward Meng Hao. In an instant they had surrounded him, blotting out the sky completely. Poison? Thought Meng Hao. Looking back at his footprints, he saw that the sand there was completely black. He turned and flicked his sleeve, comforting the mastiff, then walked toward the incoming scorpions. The mastiff let out a threatening growl, following Meng Hao and eyeing the scorpions coldly. But as soon as Meng Hao neared them, they immediately fell back, emitting shrill, hissing shrieks. It seemed as if they didn't dare to even come close to Meng Hao. He didn't slow down even the least bit. He walked forward, sending the scorpions into frenzied retreat. Sometimes a scorpion wasn't fast enough. Immediately, a red tendril would emerge from the top of Meng Hao's head and stab into its body, whereupon it would melt into a pool of black blood that sank into the sand. It wasn't just the land-based scorpions that acted in this way. The flying scorpions also gave him wide berth, not daring to get too close. Along with the mastiff, Meng Hao walked straight through all of them. He walked across the land, surrounded by darkness. It seemed as if the poison in this place had no way to resist the power of the poison within Meng Hao's body, and had no choice but to disperse in front of him. Within Meng Hao's two eyes appeared flickering flowers in the shape of laughing, crying demonic faces. Behind him gradually appeared a three-colored resurrection lily. The three colors of the resurrection lily interlocked with each other and glimmered, making it impossible for any other poisons to exist nearby it. Meng Hao's face was expressionless. After he had walked for a day, an endless sea of vipers appeared in front of him. An acrid wind washed across his face. However, he just continued to walk forward as if he hadn't even noticed. When he approached, the vipers instantly began to twist and writhe, then let out anxious hissing noises as they slithered away. Some of them even allowed him to step directly onto their bodies. They would quiver but offer no resistance. After he passed by, they seemed to recover a bit. It appeared as if within Meng Hao's body existed the power of the sovereign of poisons. Facing this power, any other poison or poisonous creature had no choice but to lower its head in submission. In contrast to Meng Hao, Wang Lihai proceeded through the desert with a frown, frequently consuming poison-dispelling pills. In the 7 previous legacy tournaments of the past tens of thousands of years, this poison desert had appeared twice. The great clans and sects had taken special note of it. It didn't appear every single time because the spell matrices often changed. But when it did, one needed to be completely prepared. Even still, poison-repelling pills were never completely effective, or were minimally effective against certain poisons. For example, at the moment Wang Lihai faced up against a thick poison mist. Looking at it, his brow furrowed anxiously. From the first time he had stepped foot outside of the Wang clan until now, he had never seen anything like it. He continued to wonder why the patriarch had insisted that he be the one to come here. Thinking back to the look in the man's eyes, there had to be some reason. There's no way that I'll actually die in here, is there? His eyes flickered with a strange light. Xianxia was also facing the poison mist in the 4th matrix. She had a beautiful face and an otherworldly countenance. Right now, a frown covered her face, despite the fact that a softly rippling shield surrounded her, protecting her. The others who were in the 4th matrix were in similar situations. Time passed and they slowly proceeded. Even the sand beneath their feet was poison, and they knew that if they were not cautious, they would die. It can be said that without proper preparations, the 4th matrix is without a doubt a matrix of death. In fact, even having prepared, poison-repelling items became less and less effective the further into the desert you went. You would have to rely on your cultivation base and your luck. But Meng Hao was different. He walked forward through the poison mist, his face expressionless. He drew in a breath, but the poison mist did nothing but float away from him. In fact, the air was completely clear for a space of 30 meters in all directions. The mastiff followed Meng Hao eagerly. It seemed to be quite happy to take such a leisurely stroll through this matrix. It pounced forward and stepped down on a poison creature, batting it back and forth between its paws. It seemed to be having a lot of fun. It looked at Meng Hao, then bounded after him. 7 days passed, and Meng Hao was already far, far ahead of any of the others. In the depths of the desert, he slowly stopped walking, looking forward in amazement. Something very strange had just appeared in front of him. There, in an empty stretch of desert, was a place with no sand. It contained only a single flower. This flower had 4 petals that were composed of 4 colors. Its leaves were emerald green, and its petals had the appearance of a demonic face that was both crying and laughing at the same time. This was none other than a 4-colored resurrection lily. A resurrection lily growing here, in this desert, in this spell matrix. This chapter was sponsored by Christopher Weiser. Chapter 126, Out of Nowhere. On the opposite shore is a flower blooming with 7 colors, its name meaning immortal ascension. 1. The name of the resurrection lily in Chinese contains a reference to a Buddhist concept called paramita, which literally translates as the other shore. Every resurrection lily feeds on the life of someone powerful, watered with their blood. From countless mystical condensations it lives, 1 color to 7. Meng Hao had been infected with a 3-colored resurrection lily. In front was a 4-colored one. He sensed this flower had once been a cultivator like him. A 3-colored mist emerged from his head, congealing into a beautiful resurrection lily. It swayed, petals forming a demonic face, wishing to cry but unwilling. The 4-colored lily before him swayed. A dim image of a white-robed man stood on it, silently looking directly at Meng Hao. They gazed through time from opposite shores. The white-robed man's side lifted his hand, and a glowing door appeared. People sharing the same fate needn't make things difficult. The door led out of the 4th matrix. The man vanished, leaving only the resurrection lily, swaying slowly, wanting to cry yet unwilling. Meng Hao clasped his hands and bowed deeply. He lifted his head and walked through the door, his mood mixed. The world around him fragmented, then came back together. He was on a large platform filled with dense spiritual energy that immediately enveloped him and the mastiff. Ahead of him was the 5th matrix and Li Dai. Everyone else was stuck behind Meng Hao in the 4th matrix. To emerge from the 4th matrix in fewer than 10 days was something that had never happened during all the legacy tournaments since ancient times. Meng Hao had charged through the 4th matrix faster than anyone else in history. Outside in the southern domain, Meng Hao's appearance caused an uproar. Everyone watching the blood screens outside the Blood Immortal Legacy Zone stared at Meng Hao's indistinct figure, shocked. They simply couldn't believe it. 7 days. This person charged through the 4th matrix in 7 days. How did he do it? In the history of the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, something like this has never happened. Based on his performance in the 4th matrix, he's now superseded all those others. Now, the only person in front of him is Li Dai. If he can do as well in the 5th matrix, then, even if he doesn't acquire the legacy of the Blood Immortal, he'll still be famous in all the southern domain. Where is this guy from? I can't believe that he has no history. Unless he's from the Black Civ sect. After all, when the 7 previous Blood Immortal Legacy Zones opened, the Black Civ sect never showed up. Amidst the continuous uproar, eccentric Song stared at the indistinct form of Meng Hao as he sat meditating. It wasn't just him. Wu Dinkyu of the Violet Fate sect, Zhao Shanling from the Golden Frost sect, and even Zhou Yannian of the Solitary Sword sect as well as Chen Fan, were all paying very close attention to Meng Hao. Of course, none of them had any way to know that each and every one of them had met him before. Wang Tengfei glanced at Meng Hao, his hands clasped together tightly. He had no way to recognize him either, and in any case, was paying more attention to his brother Wang Lihai. In the Li clan, frowns had appeared on the faces of the 2 old nascent soul cultivators. They were now feeling a bit threatened by Meng Hao. While the outside world buzzed about Meng Hao getting through the 4th matrix in 7 days, he sat meditating, absorbing the boundless spiritual energy of heaven and earth as quickly as possible. The outline of his 2nd Tao pillar was becoming more and more distinct. His mastiff was also absorbing spiritual energy rapidly. Soon it was as large as a person. Standing next to Meng Hao, who was sitting cross-legged, it looked quite fear-inspiring. It had a thick, luxurious coat of blood-red fur covering his body, and even his face. Visible through the fur covering its head were 2 blood-red eyes that shone with a cold, bloodthirsty light. Its claws were as sharp as flying swords, and seemed capable of ripping apart heaven and earth. When it opened its mouth, the first thing you saw were long, sharp teeth, seemingly capable of ripping apart any living thing. Meng Hao continued to meditate for 8 days after leaving the 4th matrix. Eventually, the air rippled and Wang Lihai emerged. When he did, he looked at Meng Hao with surprise. He had assumed that he would be the first person after Li Dai to emerge from the 4th matrix. Having passed through the matrix in half a month should have caused quite a stir outside. However, any stir he might have caused was already stolen by Meng Hao. He looked closely at Meng Hao for a moment, and then sat down cross-legged to meditate. 3 more days passed before Xianxia came out. She staggered a bit, blood oozing out of her mouth, before sitting down cross-legged to begin breathing exercises. Meng Hao opened his eyes. The spiritual energy in this place was dissipating. He muttered to himself for a moment. The outline of his second Tao pillar was almost completely formed. If the surrounding spiritual energy remained as thick as it had at the outset, then he would only need half a month to completely solidify the Tao pillar. But the spiritual energy was thin now, and would require time to replenish. Perfect foundation. Again, Meng Hao's desire for the perfect foundation grew. Suddenly, his mastiff raised its head toward the heavens and let out an astonishing roar. Meng Hao, as well as the others on the platform, instantly looked over. What they saw was the mastiff's aura growing more and more powerful. Its body suddenly grew another 3 meters longer. Its appearance was now thoroughly frightening. Such growth would be astonishing enough, but there was more. Multiple blood-red bone spurs suddenly grew out of its legs, and its teeth grew so long that it didn't even have to open its mouth for them to be seen. One look would cause anyone's heart to thump. There was a roaring sound as its cultivation base rose. In an instant, it no longer emitted the aura of the foundation establishment stage, but the core formation state. The outside world once again erupted in shock. Core formation. This guy's blood divinity is the second to reach core formation. It seems he is the only person who will be able to give Li Dai a run for his money. Who is this guy? Meng Hao looked at his mastiff's fearsome appearance and shocking aura and sighed in his heart. The dog could only exist in this place and couldn't be taken out. If it could, then based on the friendship that had developed between the two of them, Meng Hao would feel much safer in the cultivation world outside. Still not done growing, thought Meng Hao, his eyes glittering. The only way to take it outside of this place is to acquire the legacy of the blood immortal. He reached up to pet the mastiff. Others might think it looked cruel and savage, but in Meng Hao's eyes it was incredibly cute. As he pet it, it let out a pleased grumbling sound, just like it had when it was small. Then it laid down on its stomach and licked Meng Hao's hand, looking at him with the same fawning eyes it had when it was young. The only difference now was that its tongue was the size of Meng Hao's entire hand. It seemed that it could treat everything in this world with fierce savagery, but as for Meng Hao, no matter what happened, it would view him just as it always had. Meng Hao would pet it, it would lick his hand, and everything would be peaceful. Actually, I don't care much about the legacy of the blood immortal, but I will fight to take this blood divinity out with me. Meng Hao lifted his head and his eyes sparkled. He slowly stood up. Now that the spiritual energy here was weak, it was a waste of time to stay. He had a total of 3 months to spend in here and half a month had already passed. He strode forward and the mastiff followed. Under the watchful eyes of the outside world, the two of them flew into the 5th matrix. Up until now, only Li Dai had entered the 5th spell matrix. As soon as Meng Hao entered, the archaic voice could be heard. This matrix is of the void is of the end, thus the name End the Void. There are blood runes which form a seal over a myriad spirits, gain enlightenment, and it can be broken. If you break it, you retain it after acquiring the legacy. Fail to acquire the legacy, and it shall be erased. This matrix is exceedingly difficult, so the blood divinity may choose to leave at any time. However, the legacy competitor must fight the battle to the end, even if that end be in death. As the voice echoed out, a new world materialized in front of Meng Hao. To be specific, it was a mountain. On top of the mountain was an enormous stone stele. Next to the stele was a glowing door that could only be used by the blood divinity. The stone stele was covered with blood-colored magical symbols. The symbols flickered, seemingly containing some type of Tao that required enlightenment to understand. When Meng Hao appeared in this world, he found himself at the top of the mountain, beneath the stone stele. The mastiff stood next to him, looking around vigilantly. Meng Hao's eyes were thoughtful as he looked at the magical symbols on the stone stele. Even as he did so, his face twisted in astonishment. Something was happening that hadn't occurred the entire time he had been in the blood immortal legacy zone. He slapped his bag of holding, and a spring and autumn tree appeared. He grasped it in his hand. However, he suddenly had no power to absorb the spring and autumn tree. Apparently, within the 5th spell matrix, he was completely cut off from the tree. Meng Hao's expression once again flickered. Before he could do anything else, his body suddenly trembled and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The blood was black, and even before it could reach the ground, it transformed into a 3-colored resurrection lily. Its face of petals, crying and not crying, looked straight at Meng Hao. Meng Hao's face went pale, and within his eyes appeared faces made of 3-colored flower petals. His body shook even harder, and severe pain flowed throughout him, threatening to send him unconscious. He doubled over as the poison within his body once again flared up. I suppressed the poison only half a month ago in the volcano, he thought, forcing his eyes to stay open. He repeatedly told himself not to pass out. If he lost consciousness in the fifth matrix, he would most certainly die. Actually, the poison flare-up had nothing to do with the fifth matrix, but the fourth. After seeing the four-colored resurrection lily, the poison within his body had been aroused, causing it to flare up. Meng Hao's body was covered in sweat, and an indescribable pain washed over him like floodwaters, causing him to become like a mortal in all aspects. His face twisted wretchedly, and he gritted his teeth tenaciously. The mastiff didn't understand what was happening, but seeing Meng Hao this way caused it to let out a nervous whine. And it was at this moment that suddenly, a multitude of roaring shouts could be heard drifting up from the bottom of the mountain. Down below, a horde of figures appeared. It was a group of people dressed in ragged clothing, like barbarians. They were tall, and their eyes were filled with cruelty as they raced up toward the top of the mountain. Based on their speed, they would reach the top of the mountain within the space of a few breaths. Meng Hao's face was pale, and his body trembled. This flare-up was more intense by far than previous ones. He didn't even have the energy to lift up a hand. He could only look around with his eyes at the massive group of people rushing toward him. Here is some official art depicted the mastiff at about this level of its growth. Chapter 127, This is my promise to you. The mastiff howled, leaping into a ferocious blur circling Meng Hao. Blood flew violently, and barbarian bodies tumbled down. The deaths didn't frighten them, they charged forward savagely. The mastiff's ferocity billowed to the heavens, protecting Meng Hao. No approaching enemy survived. His body shook, but he forced his eyes open. He heard the mastiff's attacks and saw the endless sea of people, but could do nothing. Time passed by, and blood flowed down the mountain. The mastiff's frenzy had created a no-man's land which surrounded Meng Hao 30 meters in each direction. Countless barbarians had died, forming a bloody mountain at its edge. 1 day, 2 days. The mastiff had no rest whatsoever. The barbarians seemed to never end. They charged relentlessly. On the second day, core formation cultivators appeared in their midst, wearing barbarian suits of armor. The bloody battle continued within the fifth matrix, with canine howls and miserable human shrieks filling the air. Late in the night of the second day, the mastiff killed the 3 core formation barbarians, although it was wounded in the process. After that, there was quiet. The barbarians retreated. Everything was still. Meng Hao looked at the mastiff in a daze. One leg was broken, exhausted. It hadn't rested in 2 days, had no medicinal pills. Each fight was to the death. Thanks to its frenzy, no one had stepped within 30 meters of him. It lay next to him, panting, licking his hand. On the peak, only a dog and man existed. One couldn't move, the other lay prone, ready to guard eternally. Meng Hao looked at the mastiff, warmth rising from his heart, filling his entire body. This creature was a blood divinity with little spiritual understanding, yet it wouldn't forsake him, fighting to defend him. With accumulated injuries and exhaustion, it would eventually die. But it stayed to protect him. Soon dawn broke, and a clamor from the bottom of the mountain broke the stillness. The air seemed to fill with the chi of core formation, and was followed by the furious shouting of barbarians charging up the mountain. The mastiff looked at Meng Hao, then licked his hand. It turned and with a ferocious howl charged into battle. Meng Hao couldn't move. He could only watch the mastiff charge into action. He couldn't even turn his head. The only thing he could see was the half of the world which lay directly in front of him. Even what was down below on the mountain was not visible to him. Barking and blood-curdling screams filled his ears for the entire day. He didn't know exactly how fierce the fighting was, but he could sense that throughout the entire day, no one could step foot within a 30-meter radius of him. When night fell, everything grew quiet again. Enough time passed for an incense stick to burn before the mastiff finally returned to Meng Hao and lay down next to him. Its back was broken, and it had trouble walking. Another leg was broken, and one of its long, sharp teeth had been snapped off. Its chi was weak, and its fur coat in disarray. Blood dripped off of its body as it lay there licking Meng Hao's hand. It let off a faint whine, seemingly calling to Meng Hao, seemingly recounting to him the day's events. It seemed as if all of the fighting and exhaustion of the day was for this moment, when it could return to Meng Hao's side to have its head pet. In its heart, Meng Hao was family. They had fought together, they had grown up together. Meng Hao had provided medicinal pills, and whenever he looked over, his gaze was filled with encouragement and warmth. All of this had caused trust in Meng Hao to grow in its heart. It could depend on Meng Hao, and it would defend him. The fourth day arrived and more shouting could be heard. Meng Hao's body continued to tremble and he heard the sad howl of the mastiff. He wanted to struggle to his feet but couldn't. The poison flare-up filled him with intense pain. Sweat poured off of him and all he could do was sit there, looking at the magical symbols on the stone steel. That was the only thing he could do. On the fourth day, nothing came within 30 meters of Meng Hao. But that night, when everything grew quiet, it took the mastiff about 1 hour to slowly crawl back to him. Meng Hao couldn't see it, but the path the mastiff had crawled was a long streak of blood. Its teeth were smashed, its back caved in. It lay next to him, its head twisted to the side as it licked his palm. With weak whines, it seemed to recount the day's events to Meng Hao. Meng Hao's eyes were red, sensing the mastiff's weak qi. Like a mortal, he'd have been dead on the first day without it. But its protection came at a price, weakening condition. Soon it wouldn't crawl back at all. Meng Hao forced his eyes to remain wide open. He stared at the magical symbols on the stone steel, longing for enlightenment. But no matter how he looked at them, he was unable to gain any understanding. It was as if they were nothing more than magical symbols that had nothing to do with him, an outsider. And then the fifth day arrived. On this day, the miserable cries that reached Meng Hao's ears were more intense than ever before. Now, there were people who approached closer than 30 meters, but before they could reach him, they were torn to pieces. Blood showered onto Meng Hao's body, and he heard the increasingly mournful howls of the mastiff. That night it took 4 hours for the mastiff to return. It didn't touch him, it just laid there. Blood oozed out of its mouth and its life force flickered weakly. It seemed only its stubbornness was keeping it alive. Despite its current state, it would fight to watch over the area and protect Meng Hao. Meng Hao could barely open his mouth. His body trembled, racked with pain, and could barely move, but somehow he was able to force out speech. "Go, get out of here, do you hear me? Go." He couldn't see the mastiff. The only thing he could see was the inky black sky. The mastiff lifted its head to look at Meng Hao. It glanced at the glowing door as if it understood his words. Then it let out a yipping sound. "I'm telling you to leave," said Meng Hao, panting, as if it took all the energy he possessed just to say the words. The mastiff's body trembled and its eyes filled with sadness. It struggled to its feet, then walked over to Meng Hao's side and licked his face. And then, it didn't leave. It ignored Meng Hao's orders and lay down next to his side. Meng Hao's heart ached. His eyes were filled with veins of blood as he stared at the stone steel. Suddenly, it grew blurry and it seemed as if he had caught sight of something. And yet he couldn't grasp it. Dawn of the 6th morning broke and the sound of movement could be heard at the foot of the mountain. A roar sounded out as the mastiff struggled up. It gave Meng Hao one last deep look and then charged away. As it left, Meng Hao's hand slowly raised up, quivering. Within his eyes, the resurrection lilies flickered. He slowly formed a fist with his hand and then stood up. He raised his head to the sky and let loose a roar that had been suppressed for 6 days. Monstrous killing intent poured from his eyes as he flew into the air. As soon as he flew up, he caught sight of a large man wielding an immense club. He had lifted it into the air and was about to smash it down viciously onto the mastiff, who was by now a shapeless wreck. Meng Hao's face filled with vicious rage. He lifted his hand and a mist of lightning emerged, shooting toward the large man. When it reached him, it exploded out in a boom. The large man, who happened to have a cultivation base at the Foundation establishment stage, shot backward in retreat. In fact, multiple surrounding barbarians all retreated. Meng Hao strode forward to stand in front of the mastiff. His eyes were bright red as he lifted his hand again. Hundreds of flying swords instantly screamed out, including the 2 wooden swords. They revolved around Meng Hao, transforming into sword rain and then a massive whirlpool. Meng Hao cried out, and the flying swords exploded. The shrapnel swept across the surroundings, and blood-curdling screams could be heard as the barbarians in the area were shredded to pieces. Suddenly, from the foot of the mountain, 8 core formation chi auras suddenly shot up. They flew straight up toward the peak of the mountain. Meng Hao was silent and in fact completely ignored the approaching figures. He looked down at the mastiff, who was gasping and on the verge of death. He knelt down and gently stroked its broken body. It looked up at him weakly and tried to open its mouth to lick his hand, but wasn't able to. Meng Hao slowly looked up at the magical symbols on the stone steel, paying no heed whatsoever to the 8 approaching figures. As he stared at the steel, he thought back over the 6 days. He thought about how the mastiff had risked its life in battle. He thought about back to the happy little puppy that had bounded along after him through the 4th matrix. He thought about the 2nd matrix, when the fluffy, cute little thing had over and over again charged into battle with him. He thought about the very beginning of the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, how it had appeared, shivering in his palm, and had licked him with its tiny tongue. He sighed. "I should have realized earlier," said Meng Hao softly. "These magical symbols are not too different from the 8th demon sealing hex." His hand waved through the air, and then no magical symbols could be seen. Instead, they were now inscribed upon his heart, a magical text just like the one that had been inscribed on the steel. As the text appeared, Meng Hao's hand came to rest on the mastiff's back. As it did, a blood-colored glow suddenly formed within the mastiff. It was bone-piercingly cold as it had spread out in all directions. As it spread out, the core formation barbarians were suddenly frozen in place, even as they flew through the air. It wasn't just them. As the blood-colored glow spread out, the entire mountain of barbarians, everything as far as the eye could see, the whole world, was filled with an intense coldness and turned into the color of blood. This place was completely sealed, frozen. Nothing in the entire world moved. Meng Hao knelt there, looking in surprise at the mastiff. The 5th matrix, the stone steel, and the enlightenment all hinged upon the actions of the blood divinity. The legacy competitor and the blood divinity must develop a certain level of closeness. After a long time, Meng Hao stood up, holding the mastiff in his arms. He walked toward the peak of the mountain and the exit of the 5th matrix. The entire world around him was sealed with blood. Meng Hao wasn't sure how others would pass this matrix, but he knew that for him, its purpose was to strengthen the bond between the legacy competitor and the blood divinity. He also wasn't sure about the blood divinities of the others, but he knew that the mastiff had always returned to him. No matter how exhausted it was, it always came back to lick his hand. To Meng Hao, this dog was an inextricable part of his life. "As of now, the legacy isn't important to me. I don't care about it a bit, but I'm going to take you out of here with me. This is Meng Hao's promise to you." This chapter is sponsored by Christopher Weiser and William Mishack. Chapter 128, Li Dai's 6th Matrix. Meng Hao emerged carrying the mastiff. Wang Lihai also emerged, his Xuanwu tortoise covered in wounds. Ahead was Li Dai, still in the 5th Matrix. Behind them, 5 people remained stuck there. Wang Lihai's eyes narrowed as he looked at Meng Hao, then sat cross-legged. Heavenly power rushed to Meng Hao, channeled into the dying mastiff. Meng Hao produced medicinal pills, feeding them to the mastiff to aid recovery. The spiritual energy was thick, especially outside the 5th matrix. The mastiff absorbed energy from Meng Hao, wounds healing slowly. Its shattered bones grew back. Soon it wasn't near death. Recovered somewhat, it licked his palm, struggled to its feet and absorbed energy on its own. In the outside world of the southern domain, everyone was in a stir. Nearly 10,000 pairs of eyes had all converged on Meng Hao and Wang Lihai. Excited discussions filled the air. Time passed. 7 days later, Xianxia staggered out from the 5th matrix. Her blood phoenix did not emerge with her. She immediately sat down cross-legged. Soon after, a greenish beam of light emerged from the green stone altar off in the distance. It flew down towards Xianxia, who then spit out some blood from her cultivation base. A blood-colored butterfly magically appeared and began to flutter around her. Seeing this, Meng Hao came to the conclusion that her blood divinity had fallen. He wasn't sure how she had managed to pass through the 5th matrix, but whatever had happened, she now had the chance to select a new blood divinity. A few more days passed. Wang Lihai finished meditating. With a look of determination on his face, he entered the 6th matrix. Xianxia sat there for a long time before following him. One by one, the rest of the competitors emerged from the 5th matrix, except for the disciple from the Golden Frost sect, who never appeared. He was the first competitor to fall in the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament. After his death, another cultivator from the outside world entered the Legacy Zone. However, considering everyone else had already passed the 5th matrix, unless this person had truly heaven-defying luck, they would never have a chance at acquiring the legacy. There was simply not enough time. The death of the Golden Frost sect disciple caused the young competitor from the Violet Fate sect to stand thoughtfully for a moment on the platform outside of the 5th matrix. Quite some time passed before he decided to leave, not confident of his ability to pass through the 6th matrix. This could very well be his last opportunity to make it out alive. After a longer period of thought, the competitor from the Solitary Sword sect, feeling it unwise to continue on, also opted to leave. The disciple from the Blood Demon sect, the one who looked like Wang Yaokai from 7 or 8 years ago, emerged expressionlessly from the fifth matrix and immediately sat down to absorb spiritual energy for a few days. Then, he and his human-shaped blood divinity followed Li Daili, Wang Lihai, and Song Jia into the sixth matrix, making him the fourth to enter. Of the 9 matrices of the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, the difficulty seemed to increase exponentially, especially after the fourth matrix. Even for those thoroughly prepared, it was still difficult. This was especially true of the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th matrices. In the past 7 tournaments, only one person had ever set foot into the 9th matrix. And that person was a chosen of the Li clan. Other than him, only 13 competitors had ever made it past the 6th matrix. Only 6 had ever made it past the 7th matrix. Starting with the 6th matrix, the level of difficulty and the consequences of elimination were increasingly brutal. Therefore, many left after the 5th matrix. Their main goal in participating was not to acquire the legacy, but to undergo training. You could say that the experience gained in the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament was something that few cultivators ever had the opportunity to get. Several days passed. Meng Hao opened his eyes. The energy was almost dispersed. His second Tao pillar was 90% complete to finish after the 6th matrix. The Mastiff stood recovered and in high spirits, cultivation base grown to middle core formation. 15 meters long like a mountain. Red eyes glowed savagely, luxurious red fur, terrifying teeth glittered. Its claws were especially frightening, as long as a person's face, and seemingly powerful enough to rip the earth to pieces. The Mastiff seemed excited as he stood. Its mountain-like shape followed along. The sight assaulted the senses with power, making thousands of onlookers outside quake. This scene would remain forever imprinted. The 6th matrix. Meng Hao looked at it, took a deep breath, then glanced back. Its fierce expression changed. Charming eyes appeared as it lowered its head for pets. It closed its eyes contentedly. "I'm definitely going to take you out of here with me," said Meng Hao, smiling as he looked at the Mastiff's happy expression. His eyes filled with determination. Patting the Mastiff's head one last time, he walked forward, stepping into the 6th matrix. The Mastiff's body turned into a flash of light as it followed. The 6th matrix. In this world, the sky was filled with thunder and lightning. As soon as Meng Hao entered, thunderclaps assailed his ears. It was immediately obvious that this world was not very large. The ground was a sludgy swamp from which emanated the stench of decay and death. Off in the distance was an enormous ancient temple. The entire temple was pitch black in color, and next to it was a gigantic statue. The statue was clothed in a simple robe, and its right hand was lifted up toward the sky. Its left hand touched the hilt of a sword. The sword was floating in midair. The temple seemed almost primordial, and it radiated an ancient air. From this far away, it looked almost like a mountain. Lightning crashed down, seemingly desiring to destroy the temple, as if it did not approve of its existence. The flashes of lightning illuminated the sludge on the ground. Countless emaciated arms could be seen stretching up from the ooze, reaching and grasping for something. From a distance, the field of arms seemed to stretch out forever. Also visible within the sludge were faces, from the mouths of which emitted tormented screams. There were men and women, old and young. Bizarre green tentacles grew out from the faces, which swayed back and forth. Meng Hao looked at all of this, and though he wasn't familiar with this world, nor had he ever seen the temple which lay off in the distance, he was still able to guess its name. Doom? Screams echoed up from the faces within the ooze. The screaming was composed of countless voices combined together. The screams seemed to be filled with rage against the heavens from people who had died unwillingly. The fury would not subside, no matter how many years had passed. This was a part of the name of their clan. Doom. The ancient Doom clan, not tolerated by the will of the heavens. Tribulation extermination was sent, but the clan was not willing to die. They gathered the entire power of their clan to form their sacred temple. They claimed the land as theirs and defied the heavens. The land could not be harmed, nor the temple destroyed. The Doom clan could not be completely eradicated. At the apex of the temple was an enormous drum, completely black in color, as if it had been dyed over and over with blood over the course of countless years. At the bottom of the temple, next to the gigantic statue, was a stone door, half open. A glowing light emanated out, illuminating the carvings of various ferocious creatures which decorated the door. An archaic voice rumbled out like thunder. "If you wish to acquire my legacy, then enter my temple." It rang out over the sound of the screams, covering everything. Meng Hao's eyes flashed, and next to him, The mountain-like 15-meter-long mastiff bared its razor-sharp teeth and glared about. A low growl rumbled in its throat, and a fierce look emanated from its eyes. Its huge frame and its luxuriant, crimson fur, along with the sharp spurs which protruded from its bones, caused it to look shocking to the extreme. Thunder rumbled in the sky and lightning struck constantly, illuminating the land. Meng Hao's body turned into a multicolored beam as he flew into the air, heading straight toward the ancient temple. Behind him, the mastiff let out a roar and then followed him. As soon as the two of them flew into the air, the outstretched hands within the sludge suddenly began to stretch out. In the blink of an eye, they had reached Meng Hao and were about to grab him. He let out a cold snort and slapped his bag of holding. The two wooden swords flew out, circling around him at high speed. Blood spattered out as approaching hands were immediately lopped off before they could even get near Meng Hao. Black blood spattered down like rain. A foul stench began to fill the air and, in fact, this entire world. The mastiff's body began to glow red. Not a single arm was able to touch it. They were instantly ripped into shreds. However, even as Meng Hao and the mastiff sped along, nearly to the halfway point, a forlorn, shrill sound arose from the various faces in the ooze. The green, parasitic tentacles which grew out from them suddenly stood up on end, one by one. They transformed into countless sharp spikes which shot toward Meng Hao. Chapter 129, Li Clan Patriarch. Countless green tentacles shot forth at incredible speed, nearly 100 meters away in a blink. The mastiff roared and flew up. Its 15-meter frame flickered as it shot to defend Meng Hao. A booming sound rang out louder than thunder, shaking everything. Blood-colored glow slammed into the incoming tentacles. After about 10 breaths, the tentacles disintegrated into green mist. The mastiff appeared tired but roared. It moved aside, Meng Hao unscathed. He petted its head and continued toward the temple. They shot forward at high speed together. 600 meters from the temple, the green mist suddenly moved, coagulating into a gigantic sphere in Meng Hao's path. The mist roiled into a green head with glowing eyes. It opened its mouth, pouring out mist horses flying toward them. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. He lifted his hand and waved a sealing incantation, then pushed it onto the mastiff. Crimson glow emanated out, icy coldness freezing everything. The flying mist horses were instantly sealed. Everything arms, faces, sludge was frozen. Without the legacy, he couldn't use this outside the world without the blood divinity. But having received the 8th demon sealing hex, he was familiar with sealing. This was powerful, and with research he could use it without the blood divinity at the proper level. As the glow sealed everything, Meng Hao continued forward, avoiding the head. They sped toward the temple. An imminent sense of danger rose. The mastiff grabbed his clothes and pulled him back. A massive sword blade nearly 3 meters thick swung down right in front. It stabbed into the ground, sending massive tremors. The ice seal split. Everything returned to normal. The massive sword, which moments ago had been floating in midair, was being held by the statue which stood outside the temple. Its descending attack had caused Meng Hao to cough up a mouthful of blood. His face was pale as the mastiff dragged him back. As they retreated, the gigantic statue suddenly seemed to come to life. It slowly lowered its head, and its gaze fell upon Meng Hao. A difficult-to-describe pressure suddenly enveloped him, filling him with icy cold. It was as if the thing's gaze could see the deepest secrets within him. As this happened, the arms in the ooze no longer stretched out. Instead, they slowly sucked back into the sludge, as if the statue filled them with dread. The green mist head floating in the air lowered its gaze, seemingly paying respects to the statue. The thunder and lightning in the sky, however, grew more intense. They focused on the statue, crashing onto its surface, as if the heavens wanted the statue to crumble. Next to Meng Hao, the mastiff trembled and stretched out prone, as if the statue's existence was a force that could not be resisted. Tribulation lightning has fallen for countless years. Even though it is this matrix, even though I am not HIM, you still try to destroy my spirit. Screw off. The statue lifted its right hand and snapped its fingers together. An enormous boom filled the air, and the statue's hand seemed to become like a black hole. The lightning quivered, then began to condense together and then collapse into countless arcs of electricity which then disappeared. In an instant, the sky became completely devoid of lightning. Everything was quiet. The ground quivered and the countless figures within the sludge trembled. The floating mist head bowed even lower, shaking. The mastiff behaved the same. It seemed that the will of this statue was something it was incapable of resisting. Your Tao pillar does not conform with the requirements for the legacy, said the statue, looking coldly at Meng Hao. You do not qualify to acquire the legacy. Considering you made it through the fifth matrix, I won't destroy you. Screw off. Everything shook as its voice sounded out. Blood spurted from Meng Hao's mouth, and his body was thrown backward hundreds and hundreds of meters. An enormous glowing door appeared near him. And you, said the statue coolly, its cold gaze lowering onto the trembling mastiff. Second-rate spawn of blood. You don't even deserve to be consumed by me, let alone become the weapon spirit. Its left hand slowly lifted up the sword, preparing to slash down onto the quivering mastiff. Meng Hao's eyes were bloodshot. Behind him was the glowing door. All he had to do was step through, and he could leave the sixth matrix. But what had just happened caused him to stop in his tracks. The effort caused a snapping sound to emanate from his right leg, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Senior, if I'm not qualified to acquire the legacy, very well, but please don't hurt it. As Meng Hao's voice rang out, the mastiff trembled. It wanted to look back at Meng Hao, but the pressure exuded by the statue seemed to have activated some ancient branding within it. It could only tremble, powerless to resist. A weak whine sounded out from its mouth. The statue's giant sword paused. It looked at Meng Hao. You've lost your qualifications to leave this place, it said coolly. The glowing door instantly began to fall to pieces. The sword swept through the air, not toward the mastiff but toward Meng Hao. A boom resounded out and blood exploded from Meng Hao's body. He lost control of himself, tumbling down toward the sludge. As he fell, grasping hands reached toward him, clasping onto him, preparing to drag him down inside. It was at this moment that Meng Hao's cultivation base was suddenly restricted. He couldn't circulate it at all. He could only watch as he was slowly pulled down into the ooze. His eyes were red, filled with resistance and ferocity. The mastiff, which was also being suppressed, suddenly let out a shrill howl. Trembling, it lifted its head. Its mountain-like body suddenly exploded with an unprecedented power. Cracking sounds could be heard from inside it. It suddenly seemed as if it would burst into flame, a flame of blood. Suddenly, its body began to expand. It was now 30 meters long. It burst free from the control of the statue and smashed through the ancient seal within itself. It flew up with a roar, charging toward Meng Hao, who was already half sunk into the ooze. So the burning of the blood spirit, said the statue coldly. Blood divinities are bloodthirsty and have no feelings. You second-rate spawn of blood. You do not deserve to have spiritual consciousness. It raised its left hand, and then the sword began to slash down again, to exterminate both Meng Hao and the mastiff in one fell swoop. But then suddenly, before the sword could fall, a look of struggle appeared in the eyes of the statue. The sword paused in midair. The will of the blood slave, said the statue, its voice grim. Damn you, won't you just go away? I'm trying to help your master's legacy. I want his legacy to live on, to be acquired by another. Why? Why are you resisting me? There are no rules in this legacy tournament, so for me to possess you is simply the will of heaven. The struggle in its eyes gradually began to fade. Meanwhile, the mastiff's body was engulfed in a bloody flame. It slammed into the ooze, roaring as the bloody glow of flames emanated in all directions. It instantly turned countless arms into ash. The sludge caved in on itself, revealing a pale-faced Meng Hao. The mastiff grabbed him in its mouth, then flew up into the air, shooting toward the large door in the ancient temple. It flew with incredible speed, seemingly ready to sacrifice everything to get Meng Hao to the door. Meng Hao's eyes snapped open and he looked at the mastiff. Then he glanced behind and saw the statue. The struggle was now almost completely gone from its eyes. It stabbed its giant sword into the sludge, and suddenly the countless arms emanated a demonic glow. They shot up, a myriad of grasping hands flying toward Meng Hao. The mastiff glanced down at Meng Hao, and a wistful expression appeared in its eyes. As the myriad of hands closed in, its body erupted into flames. It tossed its head, throwing Meng Hao toward the stone door. It had no time to lick his hand as it had when it was small. The bloody glow around its body was already fading, and weakness flashed in its eyes. A death aura began to emanate out of it as the countless hands surrounded it. The tens upon tens of thousands of encircling hands wrenched it down into the ooze. Its eyes were wistful as it seemed to recall the past. It seemed to be thinking of how it had stretched out on its master's palm, and how wonderful it felt to be pet on the head. It remembered all of these things and thought of its master. Meng Hao watched all of this dumbfounded. His body slammed into the half-open door, and the world around him began to fall apart. Everything inside, including the mastiff, disappeared. And yet, what he had just witnessed could never be forgotten. The mastiff's final glance into his eyes caused him to weep tears of blood, and kindled in him a blazing fury. Back in the sixth matrix, the struggle within the statue's eyes was completely gone. Its right hand lowered and opened up. There, standing on the palm of its hand, was a man. He wore a white robe and was extremely handsome. Swirling in the air next to him was a 30-meter-long blood dragon. This was none other than the chosen of the Li clan, Li Dai. He stood on the statue's palm, an expression of utmost respect on his face. He knelt down on one knee and offered a deep salute. Junior pays respects to the patriarch. This chapter was sponsored by Mila, Kok Yen Loong, Joshua Jacobs, and Anonymous. Chapter 130, The Perfect Foundation. What about the rest? The statue asked coolly. Having been called patriarch, its identity became apparent. This was the Li clan chosen who passed through the 8th matrix 4,000 years ago, but not the 9th. That was all anyone knew. He returned to the Li clan, said little, and passed away 1,000 years later in meditation. Without mention of the legacy, no one remembered him. But one of the clan's deepest secrets were his final words, passed down through generations. The patriarch was not dead at all. His last words stated that, after the completion of the 8th Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, the bloodline of ancient doom had fallen to the Li clan. The person who had emerged from the Legacy Tournament 4,000 years ago was him, but not all of him. That person contained only a portion of his spirit. The rest of him had forced itself upon the slumbering blood slave in the 6th matrix. From that day until this, only members of the Li clan were aware of it. It was an unimaginably fantastic situation. The blood slave was incredibly powerful, and the Li clan patriarch, being at the foundation establishment stage, should not have been able to successfully possess it. In fact, anyone below the nascent soul stage shouldn't be able to. Yet somehow, he had. No one knew how he'd done it. Part of him returned to the clan missing most spirit. It faded, leaving a final will. Ignore the song and blood demon disciples, Li Dai said respectfully. The one who escaped counts for nothing, but Wang Lihai must die. The blood dragon lifted its head. Several blood divinities appeared near Li Dai, Wang Lihai's Xuanwu turtle and the blood sprite of the Wang Yaok-looking youth. The blood divinities trembled, and the blood dragon charged forward and swallowed them. They didn't resist. A Wang clan junior, the statue said coolly. Exterminating Wang chosen I can do. I can help within the 6th matrix only. For the next 3 I cannot help directly, but in 4,000 years I've understood much about the zone. No one understands more. Possessing your blood dragon, I'm confident we can charge through the 7th, 8th, and 9th matrices in the time it takes for incense sticks to burn. You'll acquire the legacy. Many thanks, patriarch, Li Dai replied respectfully. I don't care much for the legacy. I'm here on the clan lord's orders to receive you and lead you out. When the 8th Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament concluded, the bloodline of ancient doom fell to the Li clan, said the statue, its voice deep and archaic. Those words were spoken by me, and are naturally true. The Blood Immortal Legacy belongs to you. I've been trapped in here for 4,000 years, and have no idea what the outside world has come to be. I wonder how many of my friends from the old days are still alive. When it finished speaking, the space between its eyebrows split and a glowing light appeared. As the crack split open, the statue's body grew dim. The glow flew out, forming a blinding beam of light that shot toward the blood dragon. The blood dragon didn't resist. The bloody light entered it, and its entire body spasmed for a few moments. Then its eyes began to glow, emitting an ancient aura. It made a gulping motion as if it hadn't completely swallowed the other blood divinities. Its body flashed, and suddenly it expanded until it was 3,000 meters long, causing this entire world to shake and tremble. Time passed. Eventually it shrank back down until it was only 60 meters in length. It circled around Li Dai, then flew toward the glowing stone door, and then left the 6th matrix. The only thing that was left behind was the lifeless statue, which stood there quietly, unmoving. The instant Li Dai emerged from the 6th matrix, an uproar emerged among the nearly 10,000 observers outside in the southern domain. Li Dai was the last to come out. The first had been Meng Hao, who had flown out, coughing up 4 or 5 mouthfuls of blood. He had struggled into a cross-legged position to meditate. His appearance had caused an uproar as he sat there, madly absorbing as much spiritual energy as he could to heal his wounds. Even though his eyes were closed, he radiated an intense killing intent. After him was the youth from the Blood Demon sect, who looked like Wang Yaokai, and then Song Jia. Both of them seemed to be in bad situations. Their bodies were covered with wounds, and both seemed to have broken bones. Their breath came in ragged pants, and their blood divinities were nowhere to be seen. Gritting their teeth, they sat cross-legged like Meng Hao, using the thick spiritual energy in the area to do breathing exercises to heal their wounds. Their injuries quickly began to heal, but quick glances revealed to both that their blood divinities were indeed gone. Complicated, thoughtful expressions appeared on their faces. It was quite obvious what they were thinking. Wang Lihai didn't emerge. This caused an unprecedented uproar outside. Everyone had seen the blurry image of Wang Lihai disappear within the sixth matrix. This clearly indicated that he had passed away. The Wang clan members' minds were instantly sent reeling, especially that of Wang Lihai's Dao protector and the Wang clan elders. Expressions of disbelief filled their faces. Their eyes were instantly shot with blood, and it seemed as if their heads might explode. The entirety of the southern domain was instantly thrown into chaos. No one could possibly have predicted that Wang Lihai would die. This would send the Wang clan into an unimaginable fury. Wang Lihai was extremely important among the current generation of the Wang clan. He was the Dao child of the foundation establishment stage. Chosen could fall, but Dao children simply could not. This was a generally recognized rule among the various sects and clans. This was apparent by the fact that, although the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament was important, none of the 5 sects had dispatched Dao children, only Chosen. The Wang clan and the Li clan were the only to have dispatched Dao children. The most glad of all was none other than Wang Tengfei. His body trembled with excitement, and he clenched his fist tightly. He had been waiting for this day for a very, very long time. Next to him, Wang Zifen seemed equally excited. The two of them exchanged a look. Their futures now seemed filled with limitless possibilities. When Li Dai finally emerged, the 60-meter-long blood dragon circling about him, the outside world exploded with shock. Songjia slowly stood up and headed through the glowing exit door, her face pale. She had chosen to give up. After her, the youth from the Blood Demon sect who looked like Wang Yaokai stood up. Ignoring Li Dai, he looked at Meng Hao for a moment and seemed to hesitate. Then, he turned and left through the glowing door, also opting not to continue on. Their departure caused further uproar in the outside world. What exactly happened within the sixth matrix? It looks like no one else has a blood divinity except for Li Dai, and Wang Lihai actually died. He's a Dao child of the Wang clan. Only Li Dai still has a blood divinity, and from the look of it, it's way too powerful. Maybe he really does have a chance of acquiring the legacy. As the discussions continued in the outside world, Meng Hao opened his bloodshot eyes. He slowly stood up and walked toward the glowing door, his expression one of stubbornness. Before he stepped through, he looked back toward Li Dai's blurry figure. What he was looking at, however, was not Li Dai, but the clearly visible blood dragon. As he gazed at the blood dragon, Meng Hao's heart began to pound. He wasn't sure if others had seen it, but the look in the eye of this dragon was exactly the same as that within the statue. His mind flickered as he put the pieces together. He was now 80 to 90% sure of what had happened. As Meng Hao looked over, Li Dai let out a derisive chuckle. "Remember my name," he said. "I'm Li Dai. Your dog died a horrible death." He lifted his hand to rest on the blood dragon. Hearing the words caused Meng Hao's mind to rumble with the sound of 100,000 exploding lightning bolts. Blood dripped from the corners of his lips as he stared murderously at Li Dai. Within his eyes burned fury and killing intent that rose to the heavens. He had practiced cultivation to a very high level and had desired to kill many people. But at the moment, his desire to kill this person was intense to the extreme. However, Meng Hao's personality was such that the more he wished to kill someone, the more taciturn he became. He had been like this when small and was even more so now. The more quiet he was, the more vicious he grew. People who liked to roar and scream were mere Philistines. People who maintained their silence were the truly frightening ones. A long moment passed. Finally, Meng Hao angrily turned on his heel and walked through the glowing door. Laughing, Li Dai walked forward into the seventh matrix. When Meng Hao appeared in the volcano, outside of the lake of blood, his eyes burned with the flames of fury. The events that had occurred within the sixth matrix continued to replay in his mind, and an increasingly profound killing intent emanated from his body. "Li Dai, I Meng Hao, will send you to your death." His eyes were filled with blood, causing him to look more ferocious than ever. His body flashed, transforming into a beam of multicolored light that shot toward Chu Yuyan and her alchemy workspace. When he arrived, Chu Yuyan was in the midst of adjusting the earthly flame. The perfect foundation pill was at a critical moment, on the verge of being complete. At first, she had thought that Meng Hao might not make it back in time, and that she would have a chance to study it some. And yet here he was, in complete opposition to her expectation. She considered trying to pull off something tricky, but when she saw Meng Hao's grim expression, she hesitated. It was obvious that he was like a volcano on the verge of erupting, not someone to be trifled with. Meng Hao approached and sat down cross-legged, uttering not a word. And yet his hatred for Li Dai and his desire to kill him only continued to ferment and grow stronger. An intense, difficult to describe anxiety filled his heart. He refused to believe that the mastiff was dead. He would establish the perfect foundation, and then he would rescue the mastiff. Chu Yuyan didn't dare to speak. A look of concentration filled her face. She took a deep breath and ground her teeth. Then her hand flickered with an incantation gesture, and she pushed down onto the pill furnace. As she did, the earthly fire and magma beneath roared. The pill furnace quivered. At the moment it seemed as if all the mists within the volcano were roiling. The ground trembled. Outside, the wind and clouds seemed to have been disturbed. Great sheets of clouds began to form, one on top of the other, rolling out in all directions. Lightning crackled across the sky, filling the air with massive booms. With every crash of lightning, strange, mystical signs would appear in the sky outside. Is this really a thunder pill? Of course, Chu Yuyan had had her suspicious, but now seeing the roiling of the mists and everything above in the outside world, she was even more sure. This pill was definitely not some type of thunder pill. For a pill to provoke this change in the heavens based on its mere appearance, it seems as if the heavens wish to destroy the pill itself. Just what pill is this? Chu Yuyan was shocked to the core. As she pressed down on the pill furnace, a roaring filled the air. Suddenly, the pill furnace collapsed into pieces, sending out a powerful blast. Chu Yuyan coughed up a mouthful of blood as she was flung backward into the stone wall. She instantly fell unconscious. Meng Hao's eyes suddenly opened and he shot forward. As the pill furnace collapsed, the outside world filled with lightning and roaring, and the ground quaked, filling with cracks and fissures. Meng Hao reached out and snatched the mystical seven-colored pill from within the furnace. The perfect foundation pill. This pill was a defiance of the heavens, not permitted by heaven and earth. The world outside the volcano rumbled. The layers of clouds shone brightly as they churned. A seemingly infinite amount of lightning was gathering, preparing to eradicate the pill which Meng Hao held in his hand. If anyone dared to consume this pill in the face of the heavens, then they would face intense tribulation of lightning. The heavens did not permit this type of pill to exist, nor did they permit anyone to consume such a pill. Swallowing it down constituted a type of cultivation that warranted destruction. This path was a path of continued heavenly tribulation. And yet Meng Hao did not hesitate. As he held the pill in his hand, it seemed as if it were beginning to melt. He had the feeling that if he did not immediately consume it, the pill would disappear on its own, without any help from tribulation lightning. He didn't know why this was happening, and didn't have time to think about it. Nor did he have any time to think about duplicating the pill. Even as he looked at it, it began to show signs that it was about to fall apart. Resolve filling his eyes, Meng Hao placed the pill into his mouth. Above, lightning condensed and prepared to fall down. When the pill entered his mouth, it dissolved instantly and traveled down into his abdomen. A roar filled him, along with a strange power that seemed as if it might cause his entire body to collapse. This was not the power of heaven and earth, but something else, something difficult to describe. At this moment, Meng Hao's Dao pillar began to tremble. As it trembled, the crack on its surface suddenly began to show signs of healing. A feeling of perfection condensed within Meng Hao's body. His flesh and blood seemed to grow tougher. His golden Dao pillar hummed and seemed to expand. His flesh began to shine with a faint golden glow that grew stronger and stronger. He sensed a feeling of power that he had never before experienced with his flawless foundation. Along with it, his view of the world suddenly changed. His spiritual sense experienced unbridled growth. Everything in his body was changing. The perfect foundation, which had not been seen in the cultivation world for tens of thousands of years, was now evolving. According to the legends, a perfect foundation had not been seen in millennia, but here it was in Meng Hao. The power of his spiritual sense far exceeded that of the middle foundation establishment stage. In fact, Meng Hao knew that if he had enough spiritual energy, he could instant form his second and third Dao pillars. Furthermore, he knew that future Dao pillars that appeared would also be legendary perfect Dao pillars. At this moment, booming sounded out in the sky above. Up in the air, an enormous lightning bolt shot down toward the volcano, slamming into the glowing shield. When it hit the shield, each and every one of the 7 blood immortal legacy zones around the southern domain suddenly erupted with a blood-red glow. The bloody glow instantly wiped out the images that the onlookers had been watching and shot toward the heavens, forming enormous pillars of blood. Around each of these pillars of blood whipped blood-red iron chains. Furthermore, on top of each pillar was a blurry, bound figure who let loose agonized screams. All of this happened too suddenly. The audiences surrounding the 7 legacy zones were astonished, unsure of what was happening. What's going on? What happened? The blood screen shot up into the sky. We can't see what's happening inside the legacy zone. What's going on? The cultivators of the southern domain were one and all thrown into chaos. Multiple figures flew up out of the various temples of the 5 great sects and 3 great clans. All of these were ancient cultivators who usually spent their time in secluded meditation. However, the intensity of the outside events had awoken them, and one by one they appeared. The Blood Immortal Sacrifice. This is the legendary ancient Doom clan Blood Immortal Sacrifice. According to the legends, if anyone tries to invade the ancient Doom clan, then the Blood Immortal Sacrifice will appear. But the ancient Doom clan has long since been put down. Who could their enemy possibly be? As the booming filled the southern domain, Meng Hao stood within the volcano, staring up into the sky and roaring. He quickly took unconscious Chu Yuyan and wrapped her up in the black net, then set her to the side. After that, his body turned into a prismatic beam as it shot toward the Blood Immortal's sacrificial altar. Above him, the tribulation lightning descending, causing the glowing shield to tremble. And yet even as it trembled, a bright red glow erupted from within the volcano, transforming into a massive pillar of blood. This towering pillar of blood was the 8th to appear within the southern domain. Generally speaking, the Blood Immortal altar would never do this, but Meng Hao had consumed a perfect foundation pill and provoked tribulation lightning. It was the booming of the tribulation lightning upon the Blood Immortal sacrificial altar's shield that provoked this defensive reaction. Attacking this shield was the same as attacking the Blood Immortal. "Wait for me," said Meng Hao, the killing intent pouring out of his eyes. "I promised you that I would take you out with me. You wait for me, I'm coming to save you. Then we will kill Li Dai together." He flew forward like lightning into the altar, not hesitating in the slightest. The instant he entered, clouds billowed and wind whipped inside the Blood Immortal legacy zone. Past the 9th matrix, the corpse sat cross-legged, trembling. It slowly lifted its desiccated head, within which a powerful glow appeared. It was a strange glow, but somehow it made the skull-like head look excited. "Finally, I've been waiting." Within the 8th matrix, everything shook, and the sky seemed as if it would split open. A deep red glow covered everything. Moments ago, everything had been completely silent, but suddenly howls filled the air. The howling seemed to contain excitement. In the 7th matrix, the only thing that could be seen was an ancient tomb. Inscribed above the tomb were 3 characters: Tomb of Heaven. Within the tomb was a coffin nearly 3,000 meters long. Inside were heaps of bones, at the center of which could be seen a dilapidated flag. The flag had 3 streamers, upon each of which was written a name. Seemingly having fallen victim to the passing of years, the first 2 names were not clear. However, the third was quite visible. It was the surname Jai. Standing within the tomb, Li Dai looked around in surprise. The ground shook and the sky roared. It seemed as if everything were spinning. The blood dragon next to him lifted its head, and it lifted its claws as if it were calculating something. Suddenly, its expression changed. "Quickly, there's no need to take the 3 immortal souls flag. Like I said, we need to proceed directly to the 9th matrix. If we are late, the legacy will not be yours." "What's happening?" said Li Dai, his face unsightly. "The legacy has long been awaiting someone who defies the heavens as much as the ancient Doom clan. That person has arrived, but we still have a chance. The Blood Immortal is dead, and whoever reaches him first will acquire the legacy. If I had known the legacy would select him, I would have destroyed him. With him dead, I would be the destined successor." Li Dai's eyes flashed with killing intent. Killing him before would have been simple, but now that he is within the Blood Immortal's legacy zone, who would dare to kill him? Who can kill him? The blood dragon circled around Li Dai, suddenly expanding to 3,000 meters in length, clearly urgently desiring to leave. Meanwhile, outside in the southern domain, in the ancient Temple of Doom, one of the 3 danger zones, the temple itself seemed to be coming alive. Inside the ancient temple were countless statues, all of which usually stood there unmoving. Even if someone entered the temple, they wouldn't change. But now, these tens upon tens of thousands of statues suddenly began to shake. Their eyes opened, and they lifted their heads toward the heavens. The entire clan then let out a defiant howl. As the howl reverberated out, the statues began to fly up into the air and circle around the temple. Quite a few cultivators were on watch nearby the temple, and this instantly caused them to be completely shocked. What caused even more disbelief to be written on their faces was when multiple ghost images of the ancient Temple of Doom suddenly appeared. It was as if the soul of the temple suddenly was rising up from within the earth. It transformed into a blinding beam of light, carrying the tens upon tens of thousands of statues with it. As it soared up into the sky, the temple assumed the shape of an enormous war chariot, and the statues became thousands upon thousands of soldiers and warhorses. A clan of countless warriors and warhorses, ready to do battle with the heavens. This chapter was sponsored by Deathblade. At the end of this chapter, the author Urgen wrote a long article talking about how he will work hard to update as much as possible. He also asked for the audience to support the novel, so I guess I'll take this opportunity to do the same. Currently, I guarantee 7 free chapters per week and up to 4 sponsored chapters per week. I'm also trying to adjust my schedule to bring more than that total of 11 per week. Thanks to everyone for the comments and support, and thanks to the sponsors who helped to bring more of this awesome story to all of us. Chapter 131, I'm here to keep my promise. The southern domain was in an uproar. 8 columns of blood rose toward the heavens, sending ripples throughout the sky above. The phantasmic war chariot formed by the ancient Temple of Doom caused astonishment to fill the hearts of any and all who could see it. At the same time, Meng Hao stepped foot into the blood immortal legacy zone. When his foot touched onto the platform outside the 6th matrix, a tremor ran through the entire world, and a shocking rumble filled the air. The platform continued to shake, spell matrices radiating light, a roiling mist filling the surroundings. Countless greenish beams shot up from the sacrificial altar toward Meng Hao. The glittering beams shone with excitement and hope, waiting for Meng Hao to select one as his blood divinity. Some beams emitted auras more powerful than the blood dragon or the blood sprite. Harder still to describe was how spiritual energy surged toward Meng Hao with each breath. It entered his body, causing his cultivation base to begin to rotate. With every breath he took, his body grew stronger. Wind and clouds surged, and the entire legacy zone trembled. Thunderous roars sounded out everywhere. A strange feeling rose within Meng Hao. The blood immortal legacy seemed to call out to him. The spell matrix, the platform, the aura, everything seemed different from before. Of course, the people of the outside world in the southern domain couldn't see any of this. What was happening inside was now cut off from them. Not even the slightest image was visible. The only person who could see anything was Li Dai. Having charged through the 7th matrix, he now stood on the platform beyond it. His face was grim, and his eyes shone with an intense light. He glared back at Meng Hao standing on the platform outside the 6th matrix. Next to him was the 3,000-meter-long blood dragon possessed by the Li clan patriarch. Its eyes radiating jealousy and something complex, it too stared at Meng Hao. So the legacy belongs to him, Li Dai laughed heartily. Nothing I love more than stealing rightful legacies. What a wonderful feeling. His laughter echoed as he stepped into the 8th matrix. When the laughter reached Meng Hao's ears, he looked up, and a profound look of enlightenment shone from within his eyes. He looked at Li Dai with intense killing intent. He did not race in pursuit. Instead, he waved his right hand, causing all of the greenish beams of light in front of him to fall back. He did not pick any of them to be his blood divinity. I only have one blood divinity, he said to himself, his eyes radiating stubbornness. He did not enter the 7th matrix. He did something that no competitor had ever done throughout the ancient history of the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament. He turned around and walked back into the 6th matrix. I promise that I will find you and take you out of here with me, he said quietly, and then disappeared. When he reappeared, lightning filled the sky. Innumerable arms stretched out from the sludge that covered the ground. Off in the distance, the frozen, motionless form of the gigantic statue still stood next to the pitch-black form of the ancient Temple of Doom. It was the same world, but Meng Hao was not the same person. He no longer had a flawless foundation. His rapidly healing Tao pillar had propelled him into the realm of the legendary Perfect Foundation. As he entered the 6th matrix, Meng Hao flew into the air. A breath shook everything, thunder and lightning crashed, the earth trembled. Because of his perfect foundation, Meng Hao could not absorb spiritual energy in the outside world, but this place overflowed with it. As it rushed toward him, Meng Hao sensed he was the lord of this world. Lightning and thunder crashed in the sky, and Meng Hao's long hair whipped about. He lifted his right hand and waved it downward toward the ground. As his palm descended, the sludge quivered. The grasping hand stopped moving, countless faces turning toward Meng Hao. Their expressions shifted from hostile to veneration and excitement. Suddenly, a massive crack split the earth and the sludge. It grew wider and deeper, splitting apart the hands and faces along with it. Meng Hao flew down toward it. As he approached it, the sludge crept away, not daring to come close to him, as if a deep fear of him existed within it. Meng Hao shot inside, his body flashing like lightning and radiating determination. The crack grew wider and wider, and within the space of a few breaths, Meng Hao came to a stop. Even as the crack grew larger, he saw it there, deep within, a body. It was the mastiff, shrunken to the size of a palm. Its eyes were closed, patches of fur visible through the sludge. Its fur was deathly gray, not red. The fierce, savage creature had been reduced to a memory, a cute puppy that existed only in Meng Hao's mind. He thought of how it would run around his feet as it grew, letting out playful yips, its fur rippling. Many images unfolded in Meng Hao's mind. He thought of how he and the mastiff had rushed together head-on into battle in the third matrix. He thought about how it had happily run back and forth around him in the desert of the fourth matrix. He thought about how the poison flare-up had reduced him to little more than a mortal in the fifth matrix, and how the mastiff had protected him regardless of everything. After every battle, it would crawl to him, lick his hand, and lay beside him, watching vigilantly. He had tried to make it leave, but it chose to stay. In the end, in the sixth matrix, it had chosen to help its master escape even at the cost of its own life. The last thing Meng Hao remembered was watching as the myriad of grasping hands pulled it away from him, not even giving it a chance to lick his hand. "I do not permit you to die here. You're not allowed to close your eyes." Meng Hao's eyes were filled with veins of blood. One of his hands came to rest on the mastiff's tiny body. The other lifted up toward the sky. The power of his cultivation base roared to life. Everything shook as the crack in Meng Hao's Tao pillar was completely sealed up. When this happened, Meng Hao's body trembled. He felt an incredible power within him, not a power of circulation between heaven and earth. This was a power of circulation in which he formed his own heaven and earth. In this instant, he was not absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy, he was plundering it. From this moment on, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth could only enter his body, it couldn't circulate back. He was like a wound in heaven and earth that could never be healed. The spiritual energy lost to him would never be returned. His eyes glowed with strange light, his hair whipping about. His aura grew more powerful, a golden glow emanating from his body. He bit the tip of his tongue and spit out some blood. The blood descended down onto the corpse of the mastiff, but it was incapable of absorbing it. "Your life was born of my blood. You grew from ignorance into spiritual consciousness." Meng Hao stretched out his hand, and the blood congealed onto his palm, forming into a blood globe, which he then pushed down onto the mastiff, forcing it to absorb into the body. His cultivation base erupted as he forcibly drew in all spiritual energy within the sixth matrix. Like a black hole, he pulled everything toward him at dizzying speed. Boundless spiritual energy poured into him and flowed into the mastiff. The sludge dried, arms and faces crumbling. Even the lightning disintegrated into power that Meng Hao absorbed. The sky grew dim, and cracks spread out across it. Off in the distance, the statue began to fall to pieces. The ancient temple of doom began to grow blurry and eventually faded away. The entire world grew deathly still. Only Meng Hao and the mastiff remained. Its body twitched. It seemed to be struggling to open its eyes. It could sense the aura of its master. Slowly, it opened its eyes and looked at Meng Hao. Boom! The entire sixth matrix began to fall apart. Meng Hao pulled back his hand. The mastiff's body trembled, but its eyes were filled with the fire of life. As the world crumbled around them, it slowly rose to its feet. It was not a true life, so it had not truly died. It was a blood spirit, a blood divinity, and therefore could be reborn. Throughout the ancient history of the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, no blood divinity had ever been reborn. It was the first. The first thing it saw when it opened its eyes was its master, who had raised it from an unaware puppy into spiritual consciousness. Aroi. The mastiff lifted its head up and let out a thunderous roar. Its body rapidly expanded. In a blink, it grew to 60 meters. Luxuriant violet fur, not red, grew from its body. Its fur was violet and its stature like a small mountain. Sharp spikes grew out of its limbs, and from the top of its head protruded a long horn. Its teeth were long and sharp. All of this made the Mastiff look even more fearsome and powerful than it had before. In this world it was ferocious and bloodthirsty, a blood divinity, emotionless and cold. But there was one person who could make it act as it had when small, who could make it lick his hand and have its head petted. Only one such person existed. Chapter 132, Perfect Tao Pillar. Meng Hao emerged onto the platform as the sixth matrix collapsed behind him. In the entire history of the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament, never before had a spell matrix been destroyed. It didn't stop there. Not only did the sixth matrix crumble, but the first matrix behind it also trembled. With a bang, it shattered, massive amounts of spiritual energy spreading out. The spiritual energy flowed toward Meng Hao and the Mastiff, who both absorbed it. Boundless energy thrummed within Meng Hao. His second Tao pillar coalesced perfect, without the slightest crack. Meng Hao's cultivation base soared with explosive momentum. An intensely powerful aura emanated from Meng Hao, his body flashing. Behind him, the second and third matrices collapsed. The Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament would not continue past the eighth. Meng Hao lifted his head and looked at the seventh matrix. His eyes radiated with killing intent as he stepped into it. The Mastiff lifted its head up and roared, then turned into a beam of light and followed Meng Hao into the seventh matrix. Within the seventh matrix was an enormous tomb, with 3 blood-red characters inscribed above it. Tomb of Heaven. As Meng Hao stepped inside, the Tomb of Heaven shook. Cracks appeared on the wooden coffin, white bones disintegrating into ash. A black mist emanated from the dilapidated flag. Boom! A massive booming sound echoed as the Tomb of Heaven exploded like a volcano. The 3-section flag flew up, fluttering and emitting power that made Meng Hao's eyes narrow. In an instant, it soared from the 7th matrix toward the altar beyond the 9th, disappearing past the corpse with the featureless mask. It transformed into 3 white hairs on the corpse's black head. The 7th matrix crumbled before Meng Hao's eyes. Vast spiritual energy thundered toward him. This majestic force caused a third Tao pillar to appear within Meng Hao. He moved to stand on the 7th matrix's pillar. Behind him, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th matrices toppled. The way back was gone, only the 5th matrix remaining, and it too showed signs of fragmentation. Multiple matrices collapsed, sending dense spiritual energy that formed a mist covering the legacy zone. The mist swirled into a vortex, with Meng Hao at its center. From a distance, the sight was shocking. Meng Hao sucked in the spiritual energy, as did the Mastiff. The cultivation bases of both man and dog climbed upward. Meng Hao's cold eyes stared forward toward the 8th matrix. Though the figure there was blurry, it was obviously Li Dai, whose head was turned back to look at Meng Hao. How can he destroy the matrices so quickly? Li Dai's heart trembled. He knew Meng Hao was the destined successor, yet was completely shocked. The blood dragon roared. These matrices wait for his arrival, destroying themselves to make way. But the blood immortal is dead. If you are fast enough, the legacy will be yours. A cold light shone in Li Dai's eyes as he strode into the 9th matrix. Maybe the legacy belongs to you, he said, but I'm here now. I'll snatch it right out of your grasp. Meng Hao's killing intent flashed as Li Dai and the anxious blood dragon entered the 9th matrix. Without hesitation, he shot toward the 8th matrix, the Mastiff following. As they entered, frightening howls emerged from the 8th matrix's abyss. The howls were mixed and disorderly, as if countless souls cried out with excitement and hope. The world of the 8th matrix cracked and fell apart. The matrix was destroying itself, which was a mystical command left behind by the blood immortal before his death. One of his commands had been that the first person to stand before him could acquire the legacy. However, another command was if any person rejected by the heavens appeared, then the 9 matrices would collapse, transforming into spiritual energy to help him acquire the legacy. As the 8th matrix fell apart, majestic spiritual energy rushed toward Meng Hao and the Mastiff. The Mastiff lifted its head and roared, its cultivation base breaking through from core formation to nascent soul. Its body grew to 300 meters in length and looked even more ferocious than before. The violet-furred Mastiff lifted up its head and roared, causing everything to tremble. Its body emanated an unprecedented power, difficult to even describe. At the same time, Meng Hao's third perfect Tao pillar was more than half formed and continued to coalesce. As soon as he stepped onto the platform past the 8th matrix, the 5th matrix behind him disintegrated. There were no platforms left behind him. There were no spell matrices. There was only dense spiritual energy, forming a foggy sea that enveloped the entire interior of the legacy zone. Head of Meng Hao was the ninth matrix, within which was Li Dai, receiving the aid of the blood dragon. However, he hadn't emerged from it yet. Li Dai, Meng Hao's killing intent rose to the heavens. His nascent soul stage mastiff followed him as he rushed into the final matrix. The instant he entered, the platform that he had been on collapsed. However, at that same moment, Li Dai emerged out of the ninth matrix. As soon as he did, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The blood dragon looked beleaguered. Obviously, their swift passage through the ninth matrix had come at quite a price for the blood dragon possessed by the 4,000-year-old Li clan patriarch. The fact that the destined legacy successor is here is a good thing. The spell matrix is weakened, which made it much easier to pass through. Dai, ascend the sacrificial altar. When you stand before the blood immortal, you will become the second-generation successor. The blood dragon roared, an expression of unprecedented excitement and anticipation covering its face. If Li Dai acquired the legacy, then it would be able to enter the immortal treasure and become the weapon spirit. Then he would never die. Excited laughter spilled out of Li Dai's mouth. "This legacy is mine," he cried, laughing loudly, his face savage and cruel. The Li clan had paid a heavy price for this legacy, and he had been appointed to acquire it. In the past, he had truly believed in his heart that he was the person destined to receive the legacy. But then Meng Hao had appeared, and the patriarch had said what he said. Then the spell matrices had begun to collapse, without Meng Hao even striking a blow against them. Li Dai could not deny that this nameless cultivator was the true destined successor. But he refused to comply. He refused to be resigned to this truth. He would snatch the legacy for himself. "I'll take your legacy and exterminate you," laughed Li Dai. "I'll wrest away your destiny." He leaped forward, shooting straight toward the massive green-colored altar. Within the ninth matrix, everything was black. There seemed to be no end to it. Buried deep below the surface of the land in this place was a skeleton. The skeleton looked up, and within its empty eyes, a burning light appeared. It seemed to be the fire of hope, piercing up through the earth until it reached Meng Hao. "The legacy of the blood immortal has waited countless years for that one certain person to appear," murmured the skeleton softly. "I hope that in the end, you can avoid treading that path of no return which my lord the immortal tread." The light in its eyes slowly faded into nothing. Its body transformed into drifting ash. With that, the ninth matrix shuddered, and then split up into countless pieces. Again, massive amounts of spiritual energy poured toward Meng Hao. This in turn caused Meng Hao's third Tao pillar to appear in full. A third perfect Tao pillar. Meng Hao had now reached the peak of the early foundation establishment stage. His spiritual sense rapidly increased, far beyond that ordinarily seen at the late foundation establishment. With one more Tao pillar, he would be at the mid-foundation establishment stage. That having been said, even though he wasn't at the mid-foundation establishment stage, his perfect foundation made him so strong that he could easily crush someone of the mid-foundation establishment. Even late foundation establishment cultivators with a cracked or fractured foundation were not his match. Once Meng Hao formed his fourth Tao pillar and reached the mid-foundation establishment stage, the only foundation establishment cultivators in the entire southern domain who would be qualified to battle him would be those who had completed the great circle of foundation establishment and were on the verge of core formation. People such as that were groomed by various sects and clans to be their most powerful disciples. Experts like that were addressed as Tao children. For the most part, they all had flawless foundations, and because of their battle prowess, cultivation bases, and various bits of good fortune, were the top experts in their stage. Yes, these were the Tao children of the southern domain. Li Dai was a Tao child of the Li clan. Wang Lihai had also been a Tao child. These were people who could outclass chosen. Within each clan and sect, there was only one Tao child per stage. The instant Meng Hao's third perfect Tao pillar appeared, he strode out onto the platform outside the ninth matrix. Off in the distance, atop the greenish altar, sitting in the stone throne, was a corpse. It slowly lifted its head and looked at Li Dai. Its hand lifted to grasp the mask on its face. Then, it began to take off the mask. This chapter was sponsored by Hiram Perez Tamyo, Lucas Hillman, and Abdelkrim Wahesna. Chapter 133, Do You Dare? The corpse would hand the mask to whoever stood before it, the legacy's winner. The mask was the legacy treasure. The blood dragon beside Li Dai looked excited. It had waited 4,000 years for this day. Once it entered the mask, it would become the weapon spirit and leave this place to return to the southern domain. "The legacy is mine," said Li Dai, his eyes glittering. At that moment Meng Hao stepped from the ninth matrix. Seeing what was happening, he shot forward without hesitation. After achieving the perfect foundation and entering this place, a strange feeling appeared in Meng Hao, as if he was the lord of the legacy zone. The feeling grew stronger after the ninth matrix's destruction. Next to him, the 300-meter mastiff raised its head and roared, arriving even before Meng Hao. "This is my legacy," said Meng Hao, eyes flashing. "If I choose to ignore it, that's my business. But if you think you can steal it away, that depends on your luck." He had experience stealing legacies, and it didn't anger him. What angered him was his opponent's tactics. Meng Hao's desire to slay Li Dai had reached heights beyond measure. Using the full power of his cultivation base, he strode forward, hand flashing an incantation. The lightning flag flew out with two wooden swords that emanated freezing pressure, all shooting toward Li Dai. In the same moment, the corpse lifted the mask off of its face and instantly turned into drifting ash. As the ash drifted out, the hand that held the mask also dissolved. The mask floated toward Li Dai. Excitement filled Li Dai's face. His right hand lifted up to grab the mask, but the instant he touched it, his hand was shoved away by the mask itself. It wasn't that he couldn't take it, but rather, before he could, it required a weapon spirit. Then it would become his. The instant his hand was shoved away, the blood dragon lifted its head in a roar and then shot toward the mask. Currently, the mask had no weapon spirit. Whoever entered and took over the mask would assume that role. As soon as he slammed into the mask became like a vortex. The blood dragon was halfway into the mask when suddenly the mastiff roared. The roar created ripples in the entire area, and it sped forward. Ignoring the fact that the blood dragon was already in the process of taking over the mask, its 300-meter-long body slammed into it. The mastiff's body was sucked in as soon as it touched the surface of the mask. Its fight with the Li clan patriarch for control of the mask had begun. "You don't know your own limitations," echoed out the voice of the Li clan patriarch. "When I become the weapon spirit, I shall consume you." He had completely entered the mask, and yet so had the mastiff. A blinding red light emanated from the mask, and yet within the redness could also be seen violet. It was as if two brilliant colors were trying to swallow each other up. Because of this, the mask did not belong to Li Dai, and neither did it belong to Meng Hao. Which blood divinity took over the mask would determine the winner of the legacy. Furthermore, a situation in which two blood divinities struggled to be the weapon spirit was something the blood immortal had never imagined could happen. This was completely unprecedented. There was one thing that was for sure. Whoever won, mastiff or blood dragon, would experience an unimaginable increase in power. At the very least, the winner would break halfway through to spirit severing. With the proper Tao enlightenment, the winner could even reach full spirit severing. "It was useless to save that second-rate blood spirit," laughed Li Dai. "It will just help me to acquire the legacy." Meng Hao approached, and their eyes locked. Now that the legacy zone was beginning to crumble, at long last the two of them were in the same world together. Meng Hao said one sentence: "Killing you will resolve all the issues." He continued to move toward Li Dai. "That's exactly what I was going to say," laughed Li Dai. He lifted his right hand, and it blazed with light. In front of him appeared a shining golden war chariot which shot toward Meng Hao. Suddenly, a roaring sound filled the air and blood leaked out of Meng Hao's mouth. He retreated backward. Li Dai's face flickered, and he also retreated, blood spilling out of his mouth. He looked at Meng Hao, and it was at this moment that the entire legacy zone began to crumble around them. Cracks appeared all over the surface of the dark green sacrificial altar. Everything began to split up. Popping sounds could be heard, and from the appearance of everything, it seemed the blood immortal would destroy itself and disappear. Anyone who didn't leave would be buried along with it. The struggle inside the mask between the mastiff and the blood dragon seemed to be escalating. Originally, the mastiff would never have been a match for the blood dragon, but it had been resurrected by absorbing blood from Meng Hao's perfect foundation. This had changed it into something never before seen among blood divinities. The spiritual energy in the area rushed toward the mask, being absorbed by both the mastiff and the blood dragon. The difference was, however much the mastiff absorbed, it could use. None of it leaked out. With the blood dragon, this was not so. Amongst the two of them, although the blood dragon started out with the upper hand, after a short time had passed, it was still unable to get rid of the mastiff. It also had no way to take control of the legacy mask. Seeing this, Li Dai's expression changed, and he retreated. He flicked his wide sleeve in an attempt to snatch the mask, but was again rebuffed violently. With no weapon spirit in control of it, no one could dare to take it away. The Blood Immortal had never predicted such an unusual situation. Normally speaking, one person should arrive to take the mask. The Blood Divinity would be able to take control of the mask within the space of a few breaths and would become the weapon spirit. Then the legacy zone would begin to collapse, and the winner could take the mask and leave. Instead, something completely unexpected had occurred, and thus a shocking life-or-death crisis had come to be. The world was crumbling around them. Down below, a huge vortex had appeared which was swallowing up everything. Nothing that entered could ever come out again. The destruction all around was creating an empty world. Up above was a glowing shield, upon which ripples were beginning to form. It would only last for so long before it too shattered. This shield was the only exit to the outside world. Entering that shield was the only way to escape destruction. No one was in control of the mask. Both parties refused to budge. The mask could not be taken out and the world was being destroyed. When Li Dai realized what was happening, his expression twisted. Meng Hao, on the other hand, was completely calm. He moved backward for a moment, wiping away the blood from his mouth. Then he advanced forward. His 3 perfect Tao pillars emitted a powerful spiritual power, and as he charged ahead, his right hand flickered in an incantation sign. Instantly, a 300-meter-long flame python roared into being and shot toward Li Dai. Actually, this was no python, it was a dragon, a roaring gold dragon enveloped in scorching flame. Behind it flew a wind blade 30 meters long. Burning wind filled the area, enveloping Li Dai. Up to now in his cultivation, Meng Hao hadn't learned very much magic techniques. All of his magical techniques were from the Qi condensation stage, and he had none whatsoever from the foundation establishment stage. This was one of his weaknesses, and Meng Hao was well aware of it. "We will see who is more ruthless," said Li Dai with a cruel laugh. He could clearly see that the magic being used was unconventional, but he had also already determined that it would be difficult to quickly achieve victory. The true key to victory was who would stay the longest in this collapsing world. Whoever left first without the mask would lose any qualification to be the winner of the legacy. Li Dai's face was grim. He was a Dao child of the Li clan. The title of Dao child was something he had won through pure slaughter. He was out for himself and would kill without hesitation. As far as stealing good fortune from others, this was something he had done before more than once. He had come from an unremarkable branch of the Li clan to become a Dao child, far above chosen. This was all because of his personality. He arrogantly believed his stubbornness to be one of his greatest assets. Suddenly, a fan appeared in his hand. It was a fan of 4 colors, and when he waved it, the colors expanded out, slamming into Meng Hao's fire dragon and wind blade. A boom echoed out. The 4 colors swished out in 4 directions, transforming into 4 swords which stabbed toward Meng Hao. Li Dai laughed maniacally. His left hand slapped his bag of holding, and 18 black pearls appeared in his palm. He tossed them toward Meng Hao, and as they approached, they unexpectedly exploded. Distortions rippled out along with the explosion, causing the crumbling environment to fall apart even faster. "Still think you're more ruthless than me?" Li Dai's expression was one of pure insanity. The 4-colored sword and the attacking distortion bore down upon Meng Hao's lightning mist. A massive boom exploded out, and Meng Hao shot backwards several paces. His eyes were filled with a ruthless light. His right hand lifted up, and another 300-meter-long flame dragon appeared in the air and flew, not toward Li Dai, but toward the glowing door up above. "Making this place fall apart quicker isn't ruthless," he said coolly. "Destroying the exit, now that is ruthless. Do you dare to?" The flame dragon slammed directly into the glowing door, exploding. The already rippling door began to tear apart. Massive parts of it crumbled into nothing. Seeing this, Li Dai, who had claimed to be incredibly ruthless, went completely wide-eyed. His heart began to pound. Chapter 134, 8th Demon Sealing Hex. 1. If you want a refresher on the 8th Demon Sealing Hex, check out the surprisingly titled Chapter 102, 8th Demon Sealing Hex. Meng Hao could tell that with a 4th Dao pillar, he could end this quickly. His desire to slay Li Dai had never been greater. But Li Dai was at late foundation establishment and a Li clan Dao child. He outclassed even chosen and would be difficult to kill. More important was the mastiff. The mask remained under no one's control. With Li Dai present, the struggle could last indefinitely. To aid the mastiff, Meng Hao needed to eliminate Li Dai. And his method was to destroy the exit. Below churned mists, the world's collapse accelerated. The vortex roared and grew larger, swallowing more than half the dark green sacrificial altar. Meng Hao moved backward, flicking his sleeve. The lightning mist sprang up around him, and then shot toward the rapidly collapsing door. Li Dai's expression flickered. He clenched his jaw, and a cold look appeared in his eyes. He waved his right hand, and the fan flew up, shooting toward the glowing door. A booming sound filled the air as the door cracked even more under the power of the attack. After all the destruction, the only thing left of the door was a 30-meter patch, and that patch was rapidly falling apart. "There's no way you're as ruthless as me," said Li Dai. "I don't believe you'll sacrifice your life." His body flashed as he shot forward, hand flickering an incantation. A yellow talisman appeared behind him, shot through his body, then grew exponentially as it shot toward the 30-meter door. Meng Hao's eye glittered coldly. He slapped his bag of holding to produce 10 whistling flying swords. They simply could not withstand the power of Meng Hao's 3 Dao pillars, and immediately exploded into pieces. Amidst the reverberating boom, the 30-meter door shook violently as it disintegrated further. Now, only 6 meters were left. As for the green-colored sacrificial altar, it was almost completely sucked up by the whirling vortex. Now, the vortex began to rise up toward Meng Hao and Li Dai. The entire legacy zone was on the verge of complete annihilation. Cracks appeared on every surface, and an incredible, deafening roar filled the air. Above them, the only exit was now growing smaller and smaller. At the moment, there was only 3 meters left, and yet Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding again. 10 flying swords flew out. Li Dai's face fell. If the swords exploded onto the door, now less than a meter wide, would completely collapse. Li Dai suddenly thought that Meng Hao had really given up any hope of living, and was resigned to staying in this place forever. But then Meng Hao flicked his wide sleeve, and he flew up into the midst of the swords. This made it seem as though he had given up on the idea of staying and would leave. But as he left, he would destroy the door. Then, even if Li Dai acquired the legacy of the blood immortal, then he would have no way to leave. A conflicted look appeared in Li Dai's eyes. If Meng Hao did that, then getting the legacy would be pointless. He was about to do something to block Meng Hao, but then he realized that anything he did would most likely send out ripples that would cause the weakened door to break apart. If I leave the legacy. He didn't want to be buried in this place. He was a Dao child of the Li clan. He had limitless prospects in the future. Losing out on the legacy of the blood immortal wouldn't really change anything, but dying here. Compared to my life, the legacy doesn't count for anything, and who cares about some old patriarch? Very well. But if someone else gets the legacy, then they will be buried with it along with this place. Li Dai's eyes were red as he let out a howl. He leaped up, coughing out a mouthful of blood which splashed over him. He then transformed into a bloody shadow which increased exponentially in size. He stretched up toward Meng Hao's flying swords, reaching them and Meng Hao just as they were about to explode. He passed Meng Hao and then shot into the door. Even as he passed into the door, his right hand waved out, and 10 black pearls appeared, ready to explode, smashing the door and cutting off Meng Hao's escape route. And yet, at the same time, as his right hand was still in the process of leaving through the screen, Meng Hao took a deep breath and then released a spell that he had been preparing for some time. Demon Sealing, 8th Hex, Body Sealing. His eyes were crimson as he uttered the words. This was the first time he had ever used the mystical art he had acquired from the 8th generation Demon Sealer. After achieving intellectual enlightenment, Meng Hao had tried several times to use the spell, but had never succeeded. Then, after the deep enlightenment from the magical text in the 5th matrix of the Blood Immortal Legacy Zone, everything clicked. Using his 3 perfect Dao pillars, fingers flickering, Meng Hao felt he would succeed. The feeling had grown since his battle with Li Dai began. His finger fell and the entire world shuddered. And yet, it was not actually the world that had shuddered, but Meng Hao and his finger. Tiny strands of intangible qi appeared that seemed to be somehow connected to the collapsing world. They were everywhere, blended within the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, creating ghost images of the world. It wasn't just Meng Hao and his finger that shook. In addition to the ghost images of the world, ghost images of Li Dai had also appeared. Li Dai had not passed all the way through the glowing screen, but now his body began to tremble and he stopped moving. At the same time, the 3 Dao pillars within Meng Hao rapidly grew dim. It seemed that, as Meng Hao's technique took effect, it was using up almost all of the spiritual power he had. Meng Hao's face grew pale. He waved his right hand and the lightning mist suddenly spread out, surrounding the 10 pearls that were just about to explode. At the same time, the 2 wooden swords flew out, heading directly toward Li Dai. As for the other flying swords, they lost their spiritual power and then exploded, sending ripples out in all directions. A moment passed and Li Dai was beginning to recover. However, everything had happened so quickly, he was still just staring in shock. His body was already outside, but before he had a chance to do anything else, he let out a blood-curdling howl. He hadn't pulled his right arm through in time. In the blink of an eye, Meng Hao's wooden sword slashed it off. Within the legacy zone, Meng Hao's face was pale, and he coughed up blood. Everything around him was disintegrating and being sucked into the vortex. The lightning mist made a groaning rumble. It had successfully blocked the exploding attack of the 10 pearls, but the glowing door rippled nonetheless, shrinking down to less than 2 meters in diameter. Soon the lightning mist was so thin it seemed as if it might fade away. Even the sparks of electricity were nearly undetectable. Meng Hao saw Li Dai escape, minus his arm, and sighed inwardly. Then he turned and rushed over to the half-violet, half-red mask, inside of which the 2 blood divinities were attempting to consume each other. At first the red glow seemed to be winning out, but the instant Li Dai left, it suddenly became weak. Inside the mask, the Li clan patriarch trembled, his rage billowing up. Li Dai, he roared furiously. In the past he had been a cultivator, but now he was incarnated as a blood divinity. As such, he had no choice but to follow the only true rule of the ruleless legacy zone. The winner of the legacy must have a blood divinity. Similarly, a blood divinity must belong to a legacy competitor. When a legacy competitor departed, the blood divinity would vanish. Only upon the competitor's return would the blood divinity reappear. However, the Li clan patriarch had already placed himself in the mask. He didn't disappear, and yet, because Li Dai had fled, he was now weakened. The glow which surrounded him began to fade. Meng Hao approached. Ignoring the disintegrating and collapsing around him, he reached out, circulating his 3 Tao pillars of his perfect foundation, causing all of the power of heaven and earth in the area to rush toward him. The spiritual energy entered his body and then flowed into the mask, merging into the mastiff. With this assistance, the mastiff's violet glow grew brighter, pressing down on the blood dragon that was the Li clan patriarch, completely cutting off his path of retreat. In that instant, the mastiff's control of the mask exceeded half, and yet it couldn't completely take it over. Still, the mask could not be taken away. The Li clan patriarch couldn't be swallowed up so easily. Despite its dangerous position, it still continued to struggle fiercely. "If you're impenetrably thick-headed, then the worst thing that could happen is we will all die today," rang out Meng Hao's voice. Everything around them rumbled thunderously, collapsing into pieces. The glowing exit door was barely more than a meter wide. "If you give in, and let my blood divinity take control of the legacy mask, then I won't permit him to consume all of you. Some of your spirit can remain, and eventually the day will come when you can emerge and transform back into a person. The choice is up to you." "What makes you think I'll help you win?" replied the cruel voice of the Li clan patriarch. "And what reason do I have to trust you?" He knew the danger they faced, and also knew that refusing Meng Hao meant death, but he still didn't want to give in. "You might not trust me, but you have no other options." Meng Hao's eyes gleamed. A moment passed, the space of 10 breaths. The surroundings were beginning their final descent into destruction. The vortex was only 3 meters away from Meng Hao, swallowing everything up. Above him, the exit was barely a meter wide. A helpless roar sounded out from the Li clan patriarch. This chapter was sponsored by Xianxia Audiobook. Chapter 135, Breaching the Volcano. As Meng Hao said, the Li clan patriarch had no choice but to trust him. Without trust, he would die. With trust, he had a chance at life. The Li clan patriarch's only choice was to stop resisting and let the mastiff consume him and take control of the mask. It flew into Meng Hao's hand. He grabbed it and shot through the rapidly shrinking exit. As he flew out, a booming rang out as the legacy zone was completely swallowed up by the vortex, gone forever. In the volcano, Meng Hao shot through the air as the blood lake and altar trembled. The massive stone head collapsed into fragments, sinking into the lake. The lake dried up in an instant. Only a crater remained, as if all had been an illusion. Even as the lake dried up, thunderous booms could be heard from overhead. Meng Hao lifted his head to look at the sky above the volcano. Thunder and lightning filled the air like silver dragons. They formed an enormous mass, as if they desired to smash downward, but instead were blocked by a blood-red glow. The blood-red glow seemed alive, as if it wished to do battle with the heavens. It was so far away that Meng couldn't see it, but what he could see was that the glowing shield at the mouth of the volcano was disappearing. This celestial phenomena will attract attention. I can't stay here. Gripping the mask, he shot toward Chu Yuyan while sending spiritual sense into it. The mastiff had taken it over and become the weapon spirit. Having swallowed the blood dragon, the mastiff now hibernated. The Li Patriarch's cultivation base was incredibly powerful, his initial strength plus the blood dragon's power. The mastiff would need considerable time to fully absorb him. Meng Hao had no idea when it would awaken. When it did emerge, it would have incredible power that would greatly aid him. It was asleep but belonged to Meng Hao, as did the mask. Meng Hao's heart thumped with anticipation, but because the mastiff slept, he couldn't use the mask yet. How long will it sleep? Meng Hao took a deep breath. Deep within the mask, he also saw a tiny shred of the Li clan patriarch's spiritual consciousness. It was very weak, as if Meng Hao could exterminate it with the slightest thought. He considered for a moment, and then decided not to blot it out. Deep within the mask, he also saw a blood-colored book of scriptures. Next to the blood-colored book of scriptures was a flag with 3 streamers. After a moment's examination, Meng Hao recalled his spiritual sense and placed the mask into his bag of the cosmos. He landed next to unconscious Chu Yuyan, who was wrapped up in the black net. Meng Hao looked thoughtful as he glanced up at the thunder and lightning outside the volcano. The bloody glow and the glow of the lightning interlocked within the sky. Determination filled his face. I can't stay here. I've got to get away. The tribulation lightning is here for me, but it's provoked a response from the blood immortal's sacrificial altar. He flicked his wide sleeve to scoop up Chu Yuyan. Using the incredible power of his perfect foundation spiritual sense, he examined the surroundings. He let out a cold harumph. In various cracks and fissures in the area, Chu Yuyan had hidden quite a few complete minor pills. He collected them together, then flew up and out of the volcano. This was the first time in half a year that he had been able to leave this place. Now that he was able to, his heart filled with anticipation regarding the future. But the anticipation on his face quickly turned into shock. As he gazed off into the distance, he could clearly see a massive, ancient temple that had the appearance of a war chariot, currently in the midst of bombarding the heavens. Surrounding it were a myriad of figures emitting a shocking aura, locked in combat with the lightning from the heavens. The tribulation lightning was shocking to the extreme. Even one bolt of it was enough to cause Meng Hao to fill with a feeling of dread that caused his pupils to shrink. So, this is the tribulation lightning sent after me. His heart trembled. He could only imagine what would have happened inside the volcano if he hadn't entered the legacy zone after consuming the perfect foundation pill. The tribulation lightning had attempted to break open the blood immortal's legacy zone, and in doing so had provoked the legacy, which sent the ancient temple of doom into war. Had he faced it alone with his perfect foundation, he would have been completely destroyed. Meng Hao shot away as fast as possible, Chu Yuyan in tow. His scalp was numb with anxiety. The blood-red glow was fading and the ancient temple of doom growing indistinct. Thankfully, the tribulation lightning was dispersing. Only one volley remained. Actually, to flee to the world outside the volcano wasn't really the best choice, but Meng Hao had no choice but to do so and flee as quickly as possible. He knew that the tribulation from the heavens would attract widespread notice. Surely there were already many people in the surrounding areas. As soon as the heavenly tribulation ceased, the area would be crawling with cultivators. Under those circumstances, it would be very difficult to escape. Only if he made his move now would he be able to take advantage of the chaos. Exactly as Meng Hao had suspected, the surrounding area was already filled with nearly 1,000 cultivators who had been attracted to the area by the tribulation from the heavens. Of course, none of them dared to enter the area, instead choosing to watch from a distance. Now that the tribulation was fading, their eyes began to glitter. It wasn't clear who went first. In an instant, all of them flew forward from all directions, filling the tribulation zone. Meng Hao was fleeing as fast as possible. He suddenly frowned, his eyes flashing. He stopped in his tracks, muttering to himself for the space of a few breaths. Then his eyes filled with determination. If I keep going, I'll definitely run into some cultivators. Their first reaction will be to doubt me. If I don't continue flying in this direction, then I can do this. He turned around. Instead of flying toward the border of the tribulation area, he headed directly toward its center. This was opposite of his original direction. He didn't fly quickly, however. And as for Chu Yuyan, he had long since deposited her into the bag of the cosmos. It was not a bag of holding, after all, and its insides were an entire world. It was capable of temporarily holding a living person inside. Meng Hao flew along, carefully observing his surroundings. After about the space of about 10 breaths, his expression flickered. Ahead of him had suddenly appeared a group of about 10 cultivators. Like prismatic beams of light, they shot through the air toward him. The group of 10 split up. 3 or 4 of them shot forward at top speed, their gazes fixed upon Meng Hao. Their gazes immediately passed over him. He gave off the impression that he was doing exactly what they were, searching the tribulation zone. Currently, his eyes were fixed on the ground, not looking up toward them. Were it the opposite, they would have moved to bar his way. It was at this exact moment that the temple of ancient doom completely disappeared. As the bloody red glow faded away, the thunder and clouds also began to break apart. But there was one lightning bolt that did not seem willing to abandon its mission. Even as everything disappeared around it, it shot down from the sky, directly toward Meng Hao. As it descended, it was clearly fading. However, it was still incredibly fast. It would without doubt fall onto Meng Hao. When it landed on him, regardless of how minor the injuries, it would most definitely arouse the notice of the surrounding cultivators. If they started to make speculations, then Meng Hao would definitely be in danger. At the moment, the 10 or so cultivators were gaping in shock as the lightning bolt approached from the distance. They immediately began to retreat. At this critical juncture, Meng Hao's mind was spinning. He suddenly let out a hearty laugh. Instead of retreating, he rushed forward. In a loud voice, he said, "So, there are some tribulation lightning aftershocks. Finally, I Wang get some good fortune from the heavens for me." Continuing to laugh, he charged onward. He waved his right hand, and instantly the lightning mist appeared around him. Amidst the shocked gazes of the surrounding cultivators, he shot directly toward the tribulation lightning bolt. "Is this guy crazy?" He called himself Wang. Maybe he's from the Wang clan. From their perspective, rather than seeing the tribulation lightning seek out Meng Hao, they saw him rushing toward it. And this was exactly what Meng Hao wanted. Boom! A massive explosion radiated outward. The tribulation lightning slammed into the lightning mist surrounding Meng Hao. A rumbling roar rose up, and Meng Hao's body trembled. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, and within him, his 3 Tao pillars narrowly escaped being destroyed. This was only one tribulation lightning bolt that had been weakened by who knew how much. Furthermore, it had grown more and more weak as it descended down. Thankfully, it had occurred in this way. Meng Hao knew in his heart that he had gotten lucky. Without the blood immortal sacrificial altar, and without the temple of ancient doom, the moment he had achieved perfection, he would have perished. As the tribulation lightning dissipated from Meng Hao's body, it turned into innumerable arcs of electricity, which were then absorbed by his lightning mist. It seemed the lightning flag had also been damaged by the tribulation lightning. However, it was now able to reinforce itself. The lightning glow increased in intensity, as if it had undergone some sort of baptism. This left Meng Hao shocked, but he still managed to let out a loud laugh. "I didn't come here in vain after all," he said, flicking his sleeve and laughing. "With the help of the tribulation lightning, my magical treasure has become complete. Excellent, excellent." With that, he shot forward, looking for all appearances as if he were seeking more tribulation lightning. Ah, this guy is refining treasures. Refining treasures with tribulation lightning. This Wang fellow is really daring. You were only looking at the treasure refining, you weren't looking at him. When the tribulation lightning hit him, it was like a baptism. For people who practice lightning-type cultivation, this kind of thing is extremely beneficial. The 10 cultivators charged onward, looking for more signs of tribulation lightning aftershocks. This chapter was sponsored by AM. Chapter 136, Jade. Meng Hao continued flying not as quickly as the 10 cultivators passed him. Soon they were much further ahead. Eyes flickering, he followed them, appearing to seek the heavenly tribulation source like the others. "Why did that heavenly tribulation come?" said Meng Hao in the same tone as the others. He looked very thoughtful as he asked, "What is there about this place that provoked it?" "Good question. I've never seen heavenly tribulation like that before. Don't tell me there was a person here transcending tribulation. No one has done that since ancient times, although you can read about it in the ancient records." "Yeah, it's really weird." It was afternoon by the time the tribulation clouds began to disperse. The midday sun shone over the land. Nearly 1,000 people were scouring the area but couldn't find any clues. Eventually, though, they found the volcano. Before anyone could enter it, 3 beams of light appeared overhead, each of them 300 meters wide. Soon 3 people appeared. No one could see their faces clearly as they flew directly into the mouth of the volcano. Even though the surrounding cultivators couldn't see their faces, They could sense the powerful pressure they radiated. Only late core formation cultivators in the pseudo-nascent soul stage could emit pressure like that. Within the large group of people, Meng Hao's pupils constricted. However, he didn't bat an eyelid. Moments later, the three people flew out from within the volcano. Their eyes swept over the crowd, which allowed everyone to see their appearances clearly. It's the Black Cloud Elders. So it's them. They're the honor guard of the Black Civ Outer Sect. This place is within the area controlled by the Black Civ Sect, so for them to appear is nothing out of the ordinary. Now that they're here, there's really no point for us to be here. The three old cultivators wore long black robes, upon which were embroidered flowery cloud shapes. After looking around, the three of them seemed to be lost in thought for a moment. Then, a voice rang out. "This area is sealed. Leave this place." They sat cross-legged in midair as one of the three produced a jade slip. He flicked his sleeve, and the jade slip transformed into a black mist which rose up into the sky. Meng Hao lowered his head with a resigned look on his face, just like the surrounding crowd, then began to disperse along with them. So it turns out this place is close to the Black Civ sect, thought Meng Hao, looking off into the distance. Suddenly, he increased his speed, transforming into a prismatic beam and shooting away. His right hand slapped his bag of the cosmos, and a jade slip appeared in his hand. He looked at it closely. Wow, the wind generated by that rock blew all the way to the Black Civ sect. Suddenly, an image appeared in his mind of that day back in the Reliance sect when he had walked along with Elder Sister Sue. I wonder how Elder Sister Sue is doing, he thought. He flew along for a few more days. After a while, he suddenly frowned. Spotting a location some distance away, he landed down next to a patch of forest. His right hand slapped his bag of the cosmos and Chu Yuyan flew out. Her face was pale, and the instant she appeared, she looked at Meng Hao with cold eyes. She didn't say a word. Meng Hao knelt down, running his hands across her body. He felt the litheness of her figure as her eyes widened, fury covering her face. "What are you doing?" she cried. But as the words left her mouth, Meng Hao pulled his hand from her robe to reveal 4 medicinal pills. "These pills belong to me," he said, tucking them away. He had long since guessed that Chu Yuyan had hidden away some of the perfect foundation minor ingredient pills that she had concocted. Seeing him take away the pills, she let out humph. Her cultivation base was now restored, but being tied up within the black net, she had no way to free herself. "As we agreed, I'm going to let you go." Meng Hao looked down at her, then waved his right hand. The black net widened and then flew off of her. "I told you I would get you out of there," and Meng Hao never goes back on his word. As Meng Hao took back the black net, Chu Yuyan's eyes flashed. Her cultivation base was back to mid-foundation establishment, and it seemed she was about to flash an incantation. Meng Hao looked at her indifferently, as calm as ever. Her heart sank, and she said nothing for a moment. A complicated expression appeared on her face. "The enmity between us is settled," she said, gritting her teeth. "But when we meet in the future, we will still be enemies. As for everything that happened in the volcano, you can never speak of it to anyone. If you do, I will be forced to kill you." She hadn't been awake for long and didn't know what had happened regarding the tribulation or the blood immortal legacy. Yet her feelings toward him had changed vastly from when they first met. He looked to be early foundation establishment, but the calm way he stood filled her with dread. That dread came partly from her half-year in the volcano, and partly from a feeling of imminent danger rising within her. She sensed that, if she attacked at this moment, she would be doing something she would regret forever. Her cold words spoken, she flew up into the air, transforming into a white beam that shot off. She wanted nothing more than to get away from him. The half-year in the volcano was now a complex memory that would never be forgotten. Meng Hao watched her beautiful, slender form slowly disappear. He also thought back to the half-year in the volcano. He thought about when her garment had been in rags, revealing her tender, snow-white skin and graceful figure. He stood there smiling slightly for a moment before coolly saying, "If you've seen enough, you can come out now." His voice was met with only silence from the surrounding area. He lifted his right hand, and a 300-meter-long flame dragon appeared. Instantly, the entire area filled with blistering heat. "No, no, no," said an alarmed voice. "Fellow Taoist, there's no need to get excited." The voice came from the air not too far away. Suddenly, a shimmering figure appeared which then coalesced into a young man. He had a somewhat depraved look to him, and in his hand was a paper talisman. He looked nervously at Meng Hao. The flame dragon's massive head was staring directly at him, its sinister eyes glowing. It seemed to be covering his every path of escape as it approached. His expression as normal as ever, Meng Hao said. His Excellency has been following me for a while. I'm curious as to his objective. His eyes flashed coldly, causing deep anxiety to well up in the heart of the depraved-looking cultivator. His cultivation base was at the early foundation establishment stage, but facing up against Meng Hao, he felt an incredible pressure bearing down on him. This was especially so because of the 300-meter-long fire dragon that Meng Hao had summoned. His heart shook. From what he could tell, this fire dragon seemed to have the power of a cultivation base of the late foundation establishment stage. The fire dragon's appearance had basically locked down the entire area, forcing him to reveal himself. "Senior, I am Jade from the Golden Frost sect," he said, his face pale. He quickly held out his identification medallion for Meng Hao to see. "Fellow Taoist, please do not attack. I have no ill intentions. I just happened to see the flag you used to absorb the tribulation lightning. I was very excited and followed you to see if I could have a chance to trade for it." Having followed Meng Hao this entire time, of course he'd seen Chu Yuyan. He recognized her, obviously, and was shocked. He knew that Chu Yuyan was a chosen of the Violet Fate sect, and also Wang Tengfei's beloved and fiancé. And yet, he had just observed her wearing men's clothing, which obviously belonged to the young man who now stood in front of him. Seeing the complicated look in her eyes, and having heard what she said to Meng Hao, Jade of course had experienced countless speculations in his heart as to what was going on. In fact, he had come to the conclusion that he must have just witnessed some form of adultery. This in turn caused him to feel quite nervous. However, it also caused him to feel extremely excited. "It's adultery," he thought. "Two adulterers. If the little patriarch knew about this, he would be really happy. In fact, he might even give me some kind of reward." "The Golden Frost sect," said Meng Hao, gazing coldly at the depraved-looking cultivator. He frowned. "Do you know Li Fugui?" "Li Fugui," said Jade, looking surprised. You mean little patriarch. Of course I know him. Everyone in the Golden Frost sect knows the little patriarch." From the expression Meng Hao saw when he looked into his eyes, it didn't seem as if he was lying. Meng Hao felt a tug at his heart. How could Fatty have become a little patriarch? He thought to himself. After a moment, his eyes fell to the paper talisman that Jade held in hand. Jade's heart flip-flopped. He hated to part with the talisman, but he forced himself to hand it over. "Fellow Taoist, please don't take offense. I, Jade, acted crudely today. Please accept my invisibility talisman as a token of apology for my indiscretion." Meng Hao eyed the invisibility talisman, sweeping it over with his spiritual sense. Seeing nothing out of the ordinary about it, he accepted it. "The Golden Frost sect is in the state of frigid snow," said Meng Hao coolly. "What brings you here?" "The Black Civ sect didn't participate in the Blood Immortal Legacy tournament," he replied carefully. "Therefore, the sect dispatched orders to myself and a few others to come here and investigate. Actually, we weren't the only ones. There are people from various other sects in the area as well. Not long after I arrived, I saw the tribulation lightning." He seemed to be especially emphasizing that he was not alone here in the Black Civ sect region. "Did your investigation produce any results?" asked Meng Hao placidly. "This type of thing is easy to investigate. Recently, the Black Civ sect has been distributing a lot of treasures to attract rogue cultivators of the Foundation establishment stage. After thinking about it for a while, I really think something is wrong with the whole situation." Meng Hao's facial expression didn't change. He looked at Jade for a moment, then, without another word, flicked his sleeve and disappeared in a beam of light. As Meng Hao disappeared over the horizon, Jade's heart relaxed. He wiped sweat from his brow. Standing before Meng Hao, he had felt incredible pressure and been careful to exercise extreme caution. Now he was extremely happy, and his eyes shone brightly. "Adultery? That guy in Chu Yuyan committed adultery. She was even wearing his clothes. Haha, I have to get back as soon as possible to tell little patriarch about it. This news is going to make him super happy." Back in the sect, Jade was somewhat of a gossip and loved to spread news. Having come across what he believed to be an excellent rumor, he immediately flew up into the air, heading back toward the sect's established rendezvous point. Chapter 137, 10th Patriarch of the Wang Clan. A few days earlier. The Southern Domain, the state of cloudy skies. This nation existed in the center of the Southern Domain. It encompassed a huge territory, vastly larger than the state of Zhao. Even in the Southern Domain, nations like this could be counted on one hand. Within the state of cloudy skies there were no sects, an uncommon nation that had none. Instead, there was a clan. This clan was named Wang, and so was the nation. Male members of the Wang clan who were mortal and could not practice cultivation became part of the royal family of the state of Cloudy Skies. Those who could practice cultivation entered the Wang ancestral mansion. As for cultivators without the surname Wang, they formed auxiliary branches of the Wang clan. It had been this way for generation after generation. After Meng Hao consumed the perfect foundation pill and emerged from the blood immortal legacy zone, a sound could be heard. This sound came from the 10th mountain amongst the 3,000 forbidden mountains within the state of Cloudy Skies. It was the sound of breathing. The 3,000 forbidden mountains were dispersed throughout the state of Cloudy Skies. Beneath each mountain was a wooden coffin. Only the Wang clan's most powerful members could be buried beneath a forbidden mountain upon death. According to the legends, one of the Wang clan patriarchs from tens of thousands of years ago was buried in one of the forbidden mountains, although no one knew which one. There were many deep secrets within the Wang clan, many of which the 5 great sects only had general information about. Clues could be found in the ancient records, but the Wang clan's secrets were just endless, and their history too deep. According to the legends, they came from the stars. Right now, within the 10th mountain, was a world of crimson light, the glow of blood and of fire. Here was a boiling sea that it seemed could never be extinguished within 10,000 years. Deep within the recesses of this volcano was a red coffin. The coffin had no cover. Resting inside was an old man. His face was covered with wrinkles, his body skinny and shriveled as if long dead, yet no death aura emanated from the corpse. In fact, his eyes slowly opened, and when they did, the peaceful sea of fire suddenly began to move. It was not burning higher. In fact, the broiling heat seemed to reduce a bit. "I feel a perfect aura," murmured the old man. His voice was extremely hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in a very long time. When he did speak, the 10th mountain rumbled. This rumbling immediately drew the attention of the elder members of the Wang clan. Multiple figures suddenly emerged from within the Wang ancestral mansion. These old clan members' faces were filled with excitement. Based on their understanding, within the 10th mountain was one of their patriarchs. "Perfection," said the person inside the coffin, his eyes flashing with a mysterious light. When his eyes flashed, the roaring of the 10th mountain grew more intense. The group that had come from the Wang ancestral mansion all saluted respectfully. "Prepare 3,000 rebirth stones," said the old man in the coffin, his voice echoing out of the 10th mountain. "The time has come for me to reincarnate." When they heard this, the group of old clan members' faces grew even more excited. At the peak of the Tao-seeking stage, I sealed my cultivation base. At first, I thought that like members of the elder generation, I could only struggle on death's door, gazing at immortality and sighing, ignorant and unable to take those final steps. I couldn't step into the stars and return to my clan members. A slight smile appeared on the shriveled face of the old man. The smile seemed to be filled with an intense, ghastly strangeness. "But now I have hope." His smile grew wider and his eyes shone even more powerfully. The legendary founder of the Wang clan passed down a truth of the Tao from generation to generation. He was born mediocre, but one year he was able to wrest away someone's foundation establishment and thus tread the path of a powerful expert. Then he became a legend. Now a perfect foundation has appeared. I too shall tread the path of the legendary founder. I shall wrest away perfection and then take the next step, immortal ascension. Except, this person's cultivation base is too weak. It's not sufficient to sustain my immortal ascension. I must wait a bit longer, just wait a bit, wait. Within the coffin, the old man's smile grew more vigorous. Then, after a while, he closed his eyes. The sea of fire within the 10th mountain once again dared to rekindle its inextinguishable flames. Several days later, beneath a cloudless sky, a bright greenish beam shot through the air, Meng Hao slicing through the sky. Meng Hao had known Jade was following and let him go. Of course, he had prevented the young man from hearing some things. In any case, Dea was connected to Fatty, so Meng Hao let him go. Concocting the perfect foundation pill took many spirit stones. I still have some, but not many. Meng Hao frowned, examining his bag and sighing. Before I entered the cultivation world, I was running low on silver. After I became a chi condensation cultivator, I was always running low on spirit stones. Now I've reached foundation establishment, but I'm still running low on spirit stones. His brow furrowed as his longing for spirit stones was once again kindled. Now that his cultivation practice had reached this level, his need for spirit stones was even greater. And then there's the poison of the three-colored resurrection lily. If I can't dispel it, it's going to be a real problem. His frown deepened. Furthermore, he muttered to himself, even though I'm much more powerful now that I have a perfect foundation, I'm cut off from heaven and earth. I have no way to absorb spiritual energy. The only way to get it is by consuming pills. I can't keep doing that forever. But he had been prepared for that. Given a second chance, he would definitely choose to consume the perfect foundation pill. You win some, you lose some, it's fair. Meng Hao lifted his head. Smacking the bag of the cosmos, he retrieved the blood-colored mask. A warm feeling filled his heart. Despite my current situation, at least I acquired the blood immortal legacy. Now I just have to wait for the mastiff to wake up. Then everything will be a bit better. His eyes shone with anticipation. He cast his spiritual sense deep into the blood-colored mask. He could sense the mastiff's slumbering form. Though he had no idea when it might awaken, he could sense a powerful pressure emanating from it, a pressure which was continuing to grow more powerful. And then there's this flag. Meng Hao's eyes flashed. His spiritual sense fell onto the dilapidated flag of three streamers. His spiritual sense entered it, only to find that it was like an ocean. Compared to it, Meng Hao's spiritual sense was incredibly small. He had no way whatsoever to do anything with it. However, he was able to sense an incredibly might within it like that of the heavens. It seemed mighty enough to lay waste to heaven and earth. My cultivation base isn't sufficient. Even though this treasure is somewhat broken down, it was still inside the Blood Immortal's legacy zone. It must be extremely valuable. When my cultivation base is strong enough, I'll be able to use it, and I'm sure it will be powerful enough to shock the heavens. Palpitating with anticipation, he withdrew his spiritual sense. It was then that he caught sight of the character written on the third streamer, Jai Chinese letter. Why does it have the character Jai on it? Is it a family name? He thought about it for a bit, then focused his attention on the scroll of the Blood Immortal Legacy. The instant he looked at it, he felt as if his head were about to be split in half. To the average person, this pain would be excruciating and difficult to bear. But to Meng Hao, it was nothing compared to the anguish he suffered during his poison flare-ups. His expression flickered somewhat, but as he focused on the splitting pain in his head, he caught sight of a special technique. Spirit-devouring scripture. Meng Hao's heart trembled as the three blood-colored characters appeared in front of him and branded themselves indelibly onto his mind. Meng Hao's head began to thrum as it was filled with an ancient voice. It was impossible to say whether the voice was male or female. If you cultivate according to my scripture, you can wrest control of spirit and blood and fuse them into your body. Refine them into a body of blood, spirit of blood, a blood immortal, a blood Tao. There are countless cultivation methods in heaven and earth. The bloodline of my legacy stretches back to the powerful first founder. The bloodline contains his will and can be passed on to tens of thousands of generations. When the bloodline is awakened in the descendants, they shall possess latent talent. My technique can be used to wrest away latent talent and then sense the almighty will of the founder. Refine the body, make the latent talent yours. Some have even tried to bring the ghost of the founder into the world to destroy immortals and devils. Practicing cultivation according to the technique of my legacy is an insult to the heavens. But fear not ghosts and divinities. Overturn the vault of the heavens with the flip of a hand. Lower your head to cause heaven and earth to mourn. Slowly, a scripture came to be branded onto Meng Hao's mind. Then, a vast amount of miscellaneous information about the mask poured into his head. I am the blood immortal. My whole life was spent battling the heavens. I met defeat only thrice. I wrested spirits away from heaven and earth. Because I desired to wrest away the bloodline of Jai, the heavens shunned me and longed for my destruction. My body could be destroyed, but not my will. I was not willing to give in because of 3 defeats. Therefore, I created 3 techniques: the blood finger, the blood palm, and the blood death world. Descendants of the legacy of my Tao, do not forget that you must wrest away the bloodline of Jai. Make the Tao of heaven weep and the earth mourn. Remember the techniques of the blood immortal, the 9 killing magics. Remember the day your Tao is achieved, put on my mask and hoist the flag of 3 streamers. Defy the ancients, topple the heavens. Without a face, a single word, the flames of war unify. Sundered clouds, a bloody rain, seas that fill the sky. Capture the gods, advance the troops, fire consumes the towers. Forge all spirits and bloodlines into the 9 killing powers. Meng Hao's body trembled and he opened his eyes. He was still flying through the sky, above a vast empty space and barren mountains. His eyes continued to swim, and his mind echoed with the archaic voice. Wrest away bloodline, achieve success. The strength of the bloodline is up to the glory of the founder. rested latent talent of the bloodline, can be refined into a body of blood, a body refined outside the body. No one person can hold the power of an entire bloodline. The blood of 3 generations is required to refine even a minor blood clone. If 6 generations of bloodlines are congealed, then a magnificent blood spirit can be achieved. If 9 generations of blood, then the great circle of the blood spirit can be completed. The ancestors determine the strength of a bloodline. The stronger the past generations, the stronger the blood spirit. Thus it becomes death. 9 bloodlines, 9 experts. They become the 9 deaths fused into one. This is the blood Tao, Meng Hao panted, his mouth dry. At the moment he was no longer flying. He had landed onto a barren mountain where he now sat cross-legged, feeling the spirit-devouring scripture pulsing through his head. This was the complete scripture, the full legacy. But within the legacy was something that filled Meng Hao with the reek of blood. He sat in thought for a long time before his eyes began to shine. Without a face, a single word, the flames of war unify. Sundered clouds, a bloody rain, seas that fill the sky. Capture the gods, advance the troops, fire consumes the towers. Forge all spirits and bloodlines into the 9 killing powers. There are 4 magics within. Meng Hao was thoughtful for a while before looking down at the mask in his hand. The mask was completely featureless, with no eyes, nose, ears, or mouth. As he looked at it, his hand began to grow warm and his eyes shined. It seemed as if he were about to put the mask onto his face. As the mask neared his face, it grew warmer and began to squirm. A bloody aura emanated from it. Just as Meng Hao was about to place it on his face, the copper mirror within his bag of holding suddenly let out a sharp sound that was like the call of a bird. The bird call entered Meng Hao's mind and his heart trembled. The light in his eyes suddenly became clear, and he suddenly put the mask down. His eyes filled with a hard look. Are you looking to die, you discarnate soul? This chapter was sponsored by Jonathan Murphy. Chapter 138, Good Luck Charm. Meng Hao's left hand flickered an incantation. He pressed a finger to his solar plexus, and cultivation blood seeped from his mouth. This blood was precious. Cultivators could only produce so much. But Meng Hao didn't hesitate. He wiped the blood from his lips with a finger, then pressed it onto the mask. According to the spirit-devouring scripture branded onto his mind, this was a simple method to take control of the mask. His finger sank deep into the mask's recesses, pushing far back into a distant corner. There, face gloomy and uncooperative, was the Li clan patriarch. Your will is weak, cried the Li clan patriarch shrilly. Therefore the mask tried to bewitch you. Meng Hao's finger paused before the Li clan patriarch. His eyes were cold. After a moment he pushed down, causing the patriarch to let out a shrill, depressed groan. His body grew dim as it was pressed down, seeming as if it might fade away. In the outside world I could destroy you countless times over with a single finger, roared the Li clan patriarch furiously. Filled with stubbornness, he glared out with fading eyes. Meng Hao's finger paused, then slowly moved back. But then, just when the Li clan patriarch was heaving a sigh of relief, it pushed back down onto him. Another miserable cry rang out, not depressed but anguished. The Li clan patriarch's body wasn't just growing dim, it was now draining blood qi. He looked incredibly dismal. However, he continued to hold his head up and glare at Meng Hao's finger. Was I bewitched by the mask itself, or were you secretly guiding it? Asked Meng Hao coolly. We're both well aware of what happened. These 2-finger attacks are punishment, and the repercussions have not disappeared. If it happens again, then I, Meng Hao, will be forced to break our agreement and obliterate you from existence. He pulled his finger back. The Li clan patriarch might look strong-willed on the surface, but was actually very perturbed on the inside. Fear lingered in his heart because of Meng Hao's ruthless tactics. Just now, he really had taken advantage of Meng Hao's period of enlightenment regarding the spirit-devouring scripture. He had secretly used some special methods to influence the mask and try to get Meng Hao to wear it. Just when he thought he had succeeded, Meng Hao had come to his senses. This discarnate soul is very strange, said Meng Hao, glancing at the mask. It's not because of the blood divinity, there must be some other reason. Having removed his finger, he squeezed some blood to drop onto the spirit of the Li clan patriarch. As the blood descended, it turned into a blood mist, which then enveloped the Li clan patriarch. Miserable screams echoed out. Meng Hao's expression was as usual. He pulled back his spiritual sense, allowing the Li clan patriarch to continuously wail inside the mask. A part of the legacy Meng Hao had acquired was a warning from the blood immortal. Now he knew that he should not put the mask on casually. If he did, he might lose himself. The blood immortal hadn't even explained the origin of the mask, and it seemed to have countless changes within it. However, wearing it had many advantages. Many of the techniques and magic of the blood immortal legacy could only be used while wearing the mask. For example, the 4 great magics. Unfortunately, without a core foundation cultivation base, the mask could not be worn under any circumstances. That having been said, the techniques created by the blood immortal after his 3 defeats, the finger, the palm, and the death world, did not require the use of the mask. Instead, they had been branded onto Meng Hao's mind. Even though I'm the winner of the legacy, I couldn't control the power of the mask just now, and yet that discarnate soul could. The mastiff clearly took over the mask and became the weapon spirit, so how could the discarnate soul have done it? Meng Hao's expression didn't change, but this issue was certainly weighing on his heart. It was one of the reasons why he hadn't simply slain the Li clan patriarch. Putting the mask back into his bag of the cosmos, Meng Hao sat silently in thought. He looked around carefully, then took out the copper mirror. Holding it in his hands, he examined it carefully. If it weren't for the noise from the mirror just now, Meng Hao most certainly would have put on the mask. He wasn't sure what would have resulted, but considering the warning of the blood immortal, he couldn't help but feel a bit of fear in his heart. The sound just now was just like the call of a bird. He looked at the copper mirror for a while and even sent his spiritual sense into it, but nothing happened, so after some time passed, he put it back. Then, he lifted up the good luck charm he had acquired from Patriarch Reliance. He had studied it before to no avail. This time, holding it in his hand, he rotated his cultivation base and sent spiritual energy into it. His eyes gleamed. So it does have a function. I wonder how elder sister Su is doing. I haven't seen her in so many years. Will she remember me? An image of Su Qing's cold demeanor as she spoke of the cosmetic enhancement pill appeared in his mind. A warm look crossed his face. It's been so many years. Meng Hao slowly raised his head and looked off into the distance. A long time passed before he rose to his feet and flew off of the barren mountain, heading off into the distance. Half a month later, in a walled city within Black Civ sect territory, a bustling city of cultivators, a young man sat in an inn dressed in long black scholar's robes, sipping from a cup of alcohol. Occasionally, he lifted his head to look out the window toward the city center and the towering black pagoda rising into the sky. This young man's skin was a bit dark, but his demeanor was scholarly and refined. He had delicately chiseled features that, coupled with his scholar's clothes, truly gave him the air of a mortal intellectual. He had a simple but elegant gait, with bright eyes that were filled with intelligence. His lips were pursed in a way that seemed to indicate he was not easy to approach. This was none other than Meng Hao. He had arrived in this place a few days ago to confirm the widely spread rumors regarding the Black Civ sect. He wanted to go see Su Qing, but obviously couldn't just directly go looking for her. Instead, he figured he would take advantage of the gathering of rogue Foundation establishment cultivators called by the Black Civ sect. He wasn't sure exactly when the gathering was to take place, but he decided to come ahead to gather some information before making any final decision. I never imagined that there would actually be a Tower of Tang here, he muttered to himself, his eyes sweeping over the black pagoda off in the distance. 1. If you're interested in previous appearances of the Tower of Tang, check out Chapter 1, Scholar Meng Hao, and Chapter 59, Unable to See Chang'an. Before, he had assumed that Towers of Tang only existed in the cities of mortal, but here one was, right in this city of cultivators. He looked quietly at the Tower of Tang for a while, then put down his cup of alcohol. In his hand appeared an ancient piece of jade, covered with cracks. It wasn't the demon sealing jade, but rather the good luck charm Meng Hao had taken from Patriarch Reliance. He had studied it several times in the past, but hadn't been able to determine its use. After establishing a perfect foundation, however, he had been able to reach some conclusions based on various clues. This good luck charm can actually shift a person's location. It's like a random teleporter. Unfortunately, it's covered with cracks and can only be used a few times. He turned the good luck charm over and over in his fingers. By casting his spiritual sense into, he could sense it emanating its teleportation ability. There is no set teleportation destination. In other words, once used, the good luck charm could send me anywhere. I can't just test it out randomly. He glanced over the good luck charm again, then put it away. Considering his experience with the rock, he didn't want to be taken anywhere beyond his control. Who knew what terrible situation he might find himself in? As he sat in thought, more and more cultivators began to fill up the inn. This place only sold one type of alcohol, brewed from bamboo. It didn't burn in the mouth, but upon sliding down the throat it let off a burning heat. Once in the stomach it burned even hotter, causing the whole body to heat up. Such a feeling is hard to describe. If you liked such a feeling, then you would end up loving it. If you didn't like it, you wouldn't be willing to drink a drop. Not far from Meng Hao, a group of cultivators was conversing in low voices. Everyone's being a bit more cautious than usual. There's a lot of unfamiliar foundation establishment cultivators around lately. That's right, they're all rogue cultivators, fishes and dragons mixed together. In fact, I saw a guy a few days ago who had intense killing intent. I think he must be a savage cultivator from the Black Lands. They're all here for the reward posted by the Black Civ sect. The Black Civ sect really didn't hold anything back. They're offering Civ Earth pills. Those are one of the 5 most effective pills for the Foundation establishment stage. It's even said that Grandmaster Pill Demon from the Violet Fate sect sings its praises. No one outside of the Black Civ sect can concoct it. It's not that they can't, it's that they're not able. Each Civ Earth pill is inscribed with a talismanic seal. Regardless of person or sect, if any attempts to concoct it, they will face the threat of extermination by the Black Civ sect. From their tone, it was obvious that they coveted the Civ Earth pills. In the midst of their discussion, someone entered from outside. It was a young man wearing a black robe. His expression was ice cold, and as he stepped foot into the inn, his gaze swept the crowd before he took a seat in the corner. He produced a chip of iron about the size of a finger-nail, which he fiddled with as he sat there thinking, occasionally looking around the room. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever. He lifted his cup to his mouth and took a drink. He had been sitting there an entire day. Outside, the sun filled the sky with its glow. He had heard quite a bit about the Black Civ sect's gathering of Foundation establishment cultivators. Any one cultivator of the Foundation establishment stage could participate and receive a Civ Earth pill, regardless of background or heritage. Anyway, back to the point. What exactly is the Black Civ sect trying to accomplish? They're one of the dignified 5 great sects of the Southern Domain. Why are they gathering so many Foundation establishment cultivators? There's obviously something strange going on. To offer up Civ Earth pills shows that whatever it is, it's obviously incredibly dangerous. Brother Sun, your information is a bit out of date. According to the rumors that I heard, the Black Civ sect discovered the site of an ancient battlefield. They've already tried to search it a few times but were resisted by some ancient spell. If they can get enough Foundation establishment cultivators to replace the eye of the spell, then they can break through. Obviously, it's incredibly dangerous. All of the rumors are just hearsay. Ancient battlefields are always incredibly inauspicious. No wonder the Black Civ sect is offering up Civ Earth pills. Although their voices were low and not very clear within the inn, considering Meng Hao had 3 perfect Tao pillars and could hold his own against the late Foundation establishment stage, hearing the conversation of these individuals was not difficult. A perfect foundation was a legend that had not appeared for tens of thousands of years. Once he reached the mid-foundation establishment stage, he would be a match for Tao children of the various sects and clans. That having been said, having a perfect foundation was very dangerous. This danger came when it came time to pass into core formation. During that time, the heavenly tribulation would be incredibly powerful, far more powerful than that of the Foundation establishment stage. Meng Hao wasn't sure if he could pass through it. After all, if he hadn't been assisted by the blood immortal and the ancient temple of doom, then he surely would have perished under the tribulation lightning. Well, core formation tribulation is very far away. I can think about it now, but I shouldn't worry too much. Meng Hao took another drink from his glass. A warm, burning sensation filled his body. Meng Hao thought about the information from Shang Yuanziu's turtle shell, which described the perfect foundation and the perfect gold core. I wonder, when I reach core formation, will I be able to refine a perfect gold core? What will that be like? He hesitated for a moment, then put the matter aside. However, he had decided that he would begin to gather the ingredients needed to refine a perfect gold core. Dusk was approaching, and there were few cultivators left in the inn. Meng Hao was just about to get up and leave, when suddenly his expression changed. He turned his head, looking further back into the inn. There in the corner was the black-robed young man. He was no longer frowning, but instead was staring coldly at Meng Hao. A killing aura slowly emanated from him, surrounding him and transforming into what seemed like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. "You have something I need," he said coldly, his eyes fixed on Meng Hao. Chapter 139, Thunderclap Leaf. The black-robed young man stood, striding to stand in front of Meng Hao's table. He stared coldly for a moment, then sat down. Meng Hao's expression was calm as he looked at the young man. He said nothing, instead raising the cup and taking another drink. "You have a thunderclap leaf," said the black-robed young man, looking at Meng Hao. If you want a refresher about how Meng Hao took the thunderclap leaves, reread Chapter 85, Ancient Demon Sealing Jade, although be aware that Patriarch Reliance calls these leaves by a different name. He lifted his right hand, revealing a chip of iron laying on his palm. It glinted and emitted a blackish-green glow. "This is no ordinary iron," he continued coolly, his bearing insufferably proud. "It's wood iron, birthed when a tree was struck by lightning. It's especially sensitive to lightning materials like the thunderclap leaf. Will you trade it?" He placed the iron chip on the table. As his hand moved, a glow burst from his palm, transforming into an arc of electricity that expanded out. The young man was at the mid-foundation establishment stage. As the arc of electricity spread out, his cultivation base enveloped the area, including Meng Hao. Killing intent slowly roiled out of him. It seemed as if Meng Hao were to even say half of the word "no," the young man would attack. His eyes glowed with coldness. "Screw off," said Meng Hao indifferently, taking a sip of alcohol. The instant he said this, the black-robed young man frowned. "I haven't left the Black Lands for quite a few years. It seems people in the outside world have gotten really arrogant." A cold smile twisted the corners of his mouth as he slowly began to lift up his right hand. Meng Hao raised his head and looked at him. As Meng Hao's eyes met the young man's, his entire body trembled. The hand he had begun to lift instantly stopped. He didn't dare raise it further. His heart beat quickly. Meng Hao's eyes were sharp swords that pierced him. His heart thundered, his head roared. His spiritual sense grew unstable, icy cold spreading through him, cold sweat covering his body. No killing intent radiated from his eyes. Instead, it was replaced by astonishment. The pressure exuded by Meng Hao had caused the black-robed youth's body to instantly become stiff. All of this was caused by a mere look from Meng Hao. This young man was not a cultivator of the state of clear skies, but rather a savage cultivator from the Black Lands. To him, bloody life-and-death battles were commonplace, so he had a sort of intuition when it came to matters of life and death. He had a strong feeling that the person before him was not an early foundation establishment cultivator, but some savage spirit who could swallow him whole. The intense coldness multiplied and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. His heart beat rapidly, and he even felt as if his cultivation base were being suppressed. His face fell, and he didn't dare to move. Meng Hao remained completely calm. Even though the man had emitted killing aura and was mid-foundation establishment, it wouldn't take long to slay him. Meng Hao put down his cup and rose, giving the black-robed youth one last glance before flicking his sleeve and leaving. As he left, the black-robed young man's eyes suddenly flickered. He turned to look at Meng Hao's departing figure, his heart still fluttering with fear. A moment ago, he had been completely and utterly suppressed. It was not battle magic that had done it, but pure spiritual sense. What kind of cultivation base does this guy actually have? Thought the black-robed youth, his face flickering. It looks like early foundation establishment, but his spiritual sense exceeds mine exponentially. And although I couldn't sense any killing intent as soon as he looked at me, my mind began to tremble. As Meng Hao disappeared into the distance, he suddenly stood up and began to walk after him. "Fellow Taoist, please wait," he blurted. "Senior, I am Lu Tao. Please, fellow Taoist, hear me out." He hastened forward, nearing Meng Hao. His attitude was completely different than from before. "I'm willing to pay for that thunderclap leaf," Lu Tao gushed as he approached Meng Hao. "If you can make yourself part with it, fellow Taoist, I would be extremely grateful. Whatever you want for it, I'll give as long as I have it. Let's talk it over." The pressure exuded by Meng Hao was considerable, but the thunderclap leaf was very important to Lu Tao, so he really had no other choice. Meng Hao frowned, ignoring Lu Tao and proceeding forward. "Fellow Taoist, I beg of you. No matter how many spirit stones, magical items, or medicinal pills, I'm willing to negotiate. If I don't have what you want, I can think of a way to acquire it to offer in trade." He watched as Meng Hao continued to walk off toward a relatively remote area. This caused him to be a bit nervous. He knew that he had started out on the wrong foot, so, fearful that Meng Hao might suddenly attack him, he decided not to say anything more to provoke him. "Fellow Taoist, are you here for the Civ Earth pills of the Black Civ sect?" he asked resolutely. "Nowadays it's not hard to get your hands on them, but to get away safely is a different matter. Fellow Taoist, if you're willing to have a business discussion regarding parting with your treasure, I can refer you to a disciple of the Black Civ sect. This disciple has information about the Black Civ sect that outsiders could never know. It will definitely increase your chances of getting away safely with your Civ Earth pill." As the words left Lu Tao's mouth, Meng Hao continued walking. They were now in a remote, abandoned alley. "Fellow Taoist Senior," Lu Tao said with a forced smile, "I very much wish to acquire the thunderclap leaf. It's very important to me. Is there anything you would be willing to trade for it?" His pace slowed a bit. Meng Hao suddenly stopped and turned. He looked at Lu Tao. There was neither happiness nor anger in his expression. "Take out your wood iron treasure and let me see it," said Meng Hao coolly. His eyes flashed brightly. When Lu Tao saw Meng Hao turn, it startled him. Without a word, he produced the wood iron treasure and offered it toward Meng Hao. The iron chip flew toward Meng Hao, who grabbed it out of the air. He sent some spiritual sense into it. Immediately, he was able to sense the thunderclap leaf within his bag of the cosmos. It emitted an aura of lightning that the iron chip absorbed. The iron chip then began to glitter. "So he's not lying," thought Meng Hao. "But the whole thing seems a bit too coincidental." He now knew that Lu Tao had used the iron chip to track him down because of the thunderclap leaf, but given his cautious personality, he still had some doubts. "I do happen to have a thunderclap leaf. If you want to trade, then you'll need to give a clear explanation of what you plan to do with it." He waved his right hand, tossing the wood iron treasure back to Lu Tao. The thunderclap leaf was something that Meng Hao had acquired from Patriarch Reliance, and in fact, he had acquired not just a leaf, but an entire tree. It had been protected by a restrictive spell cast by Patriarch Reliance. However, Meng Hao wasn't sure of its exact use. All he knew was that the lightning flag could be used to envelop and protect the thunderclap leaves. "Well?" Lu Tao hesitated a moment, looking at Meng Hao with a hint of irritation. Finally, he gritted his teeth and continued. "Senior, I have a life magic that can be refined from stone from the Lightning Fringe Mountains. In order to release its full power, I have spent the past few years searching everywhere for various lightning-type items. However, none of them can compare to the thunderclap leaf. It's just that thunderclap leaves are very rare, so when I sensed yours, I was too eager and accidentally offended you." In order to prove the reliability of his words, he pressed down on the pit of his stomach. An electric flow emerged from his mouth, which then transformed into a fist-sized rock. The rock was black, and its surface was encircled with arcs of electricity as well as tiny plant-like vines that resembled rattan. "So what was that you were saying about the Black Sieve sect?" said Meng Hao coolly. "I can help you find someone from the Black Sieve sect," he gushed. "They don't usually interact with strangers. If you pay this person a little bit, you can find out the reason why the Black Sieve sect has arranged the gathering of cultivators. Fellow Taoist, if you're willing to trade me your thunderclap leaf, then I can take you to a secret meeting with me tonight. There will be about 7 or 8 other fellow Taoists there, along with a prestigious member of the senior generation to act as host. Not only can you trade magical items, you can also trade information. One of the people there is a Black Sieve inner sect disciple. Fellow Taoist, please believe me. Nowadays, the state of clear skies has a bunch of dragons and snakes all jumbled together. There's good people and bad people all over the place. Cultivators from all sorts of sects and clans are here. Furthermore, there are many factions within the Black Sieve sect. Of course, there will be conflicts between them. Therefore, news is bound to spread. It's normal. Of course, there's sure to be some bad information, but if all the information was fake, then no one would believe anything. So of course, there will be some good information out there as well. You really will have to make your own judgment about that, and to trust your intuition." "Let me think about it for a bit," said Meng Hao, his face the same as ever. "If I make a decision, I'll notify you." It was impossible for anyone to tell what he was thinking. He threw a jade slip to Lu Tao, who was about to continue to try to persuade him. Before he could, Meng Hao left the alley, walking quickly away and soon disappearing. Lu Tao had no choice but to watch him leave, but then his eyes began to shine. "The constellation priest of the Black Land sect sure charges an arm and a leg, but what he said was mostly true. I really was able to sense the thunderclap leaf in this place. But now that I've found it, I have to think of some way to get it. Of course, since I infected this guy with my chi parasite, he'll never be able to get away from me. With the thunderclap leaf, I can refine the legendary eyeless larva." He held the jade slip in hand, his eyes glittering. Of course, he hadn't explained to Meng Hao the true details of how he planned to use the thunderclap leaf. Lost in thought, Lu Tao turned and left. What he hadn't noticed was that behind him was an invisible phantom figure, in whose hand was a flying insect about the size of a fingernail. It was trapped, unable to fly. The figure stood a short distance away from Lu Tao, looking at him coldly. As Lu Tao left, the figure followed him. This phantom was none other than Meng Hao, who had left, but had returned shortly afterward. He was using the invisibility talisman to secretly follow Lu Tao through the dark, starry night. Occasionally Lu Tao would take out the jade slip Meng Hao had given him. His face was gloomy as he eventually reached what appeared to be an ordinary mansion within the city. He knocked 3 times on the door, which then automatically slid open. Ripples seemed to spread out from the door as he entered. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, Meng Hao saw 4 or 5 more cultivators approaching. It was hard to tell whether they were men or women, but they were all of the foundation establishment stage. One was even of the late foundation establishment stage. Their faces were wrapped up, and they hurried along to the mansion, using the same method as Lu Tao to gain entrance. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. With the twist of a finger, he crushed the bug in his palm, then ripped up the talisman that concealed him. He flicked his sleeve, changing into a new set of clothing. He donned a wide bamboo hat and then covered his face with a cloth mask. Then he walked toward the mansion. This chapter was sponsored by Zamil Media and Mr. Jabode.